Buddy, welcome back to another episode of the Team Never Quit podcast. Thank you guys for listening and watching, and please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you like what you see. So let's get to our weekly Patreon question of the day. And today we have, if you had to choose one, are you more of a sports guy or a movie buff? You have to choose one.
Yeah, I'm going to go with movies because you can watch movies about sports.
Way to get around that.
I'm going to have to go with movies. That's because that's all we do. We didn't have access to all the sports, but we did have access to all the movies.
Movie buff just because I hate sports.
You don't like sports?
Hate sports with a passion.
I love sports, man. I watch them all day, but
I cannot fathom we're paying dudes millions and millions of dollars to do that. That's insane to me.
God bless America.
But my dad, my brothers, all they did was watch sports. I was a little 5-year-old kid. All I wanted to do was watch Gilligan's Islands and cartoons, and they were watching sports, man. So I grew up hating sports because of that.
So I have problems watching a game that I've watched before. Like if I know who's going to win it.
Well, yeah.
But I'll watch the same movie I've watched over and over again.
You know why you do that?
Tell me.
Because there's some security in knowing the end. You don't.
Then why don't I watch?
You don't have to really think about it. You don't have to really.
I don't like watching the same.
But you
sports.
enjoy the movie. The
movie ties you in. There's
sport,
some sort of storyline. Speaking
there's
of
an emotional attachment.
Emotional damage.
No, emotional attachment to the movie.
Marcus actually has, I call it the movie quote language.
Who knows what it is?
So
I come from this
guy,
same
man.
community.
Everybody. I do that.
Speak,
People
I freaking
look at me
learned it.
like, what? Don't scare the normal people, Randy.
He speaks in movie quotes.
But we understand that.
Yeah.
I guess it's a sport too, because if football's on and boxing, if I can watch fights all day.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with sports because there's nothing out there that fires me up like a good night LSU football game.
Of course, Hunter.
I mean, you'll see me out there, especially if I'm there. I mean, I am not yelling like that to a movie screen.
We've seen videos of you and Stan.
Just the passion that comes out of a
my mother
sports
does.
game. It's
I like watching the Super Bowl.
I do too.
I like that.
I watch World Cup, but I don't ever watch soccer. You watch World Cup?
Every once in a while.
I'll always
they
watch
only have
football
them every
when it's
once in
on.
a while.
So
Yeah, that's a
Hunter
tough question,
watches
man.
every sport, like knows across the board, even sports he doesn't even care about.
Friends are so deep in that they just mention a name and I'm like, who? What? You know. And then of course they look at me like I'm weird.
It's fascinating to me, those guys that can talk baseball all day.
Stats.
The stats, they know the numbers, they know where they played in college, they knew the batting average, they're all that. ERA, I mean, that's impressive to me. And it's something to argue about other than stupid stuff.
I guess that's its own
I'd
language.
rather argue stupid stuff.
Yeah, I mean, those guys talk that all freaking day. Did you play sports growing up?
Oh yeah, I swam, man. I played the foosball.
You did play the foosball.
I played some foosball.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
Remind me again how you found out about the teams.
Swimming coach. One of my assistant swimming coaches was, he said he was a team guy. I think I've looked him up and I didn't see him, but
Oh, shit, really?
anyway,
People ask me about that all the time.
he was definitely a big influence. But then,
So what do you think about that?
what I mean,
I get questions on that. Well, I got people who said they were something, and they changed my life because of it in a good way. And then you find out they didn't carry the title that they were supposed to be carrying. Does that make them any less of a person?
meant to be. Well, yeah, they're a liar. So
Yeah,
But
I freaking
their
love his
lie
candor, dude. He's
actually-
freaking straight. He didn't give a shit. He didn't give a damn. Y'all
But
remember that?
my thing is that lie made you into something that you never thought was possible.
yeah, but that's true. However, that doesn't detract from the fact that I'm not going to say
That's what I'm asking.
I'm not an Army Ranger.
How do you
I'm not
measure
an
that?
airline pilot. I'm not a, there's a million things that I'm not.
I know.
And
I get it.
I don't want to. I don't want someone to think that I'm something I'm not.
Okay, so hold on.
That's because you have
we
integrity.
spent our entire lives telling people that we were something that we weren't. Like, I never told anybody I was a SEAL. When they asked me, I was a rodeo clown, a prison barber, I freaking anything.
I was a Flugelbinder repairman.
See, that's awesome. But that's a lie. Unless you can do it. Can you do that? Can you actually do that?
Oh no.
I couldn't.
You know little plastic things on the end of a shoelace?
You know what those are called?
Flugelbinders.
Oh, it's called a...
We just looked
we
it
looked
up.
this up the other day.
I thought it was
Fluga binder.
Is it Fluga binder?
I only had one person ask me what Fluga binders were.
That was your line? Dude, I heard Waffle House cook was a good one time, and he actually kept the Waffle House uniform in his apartment. So if he'd wake up in the morning, there was somebody in there, he's like, "Hey, I got to go to work. You need
That's funny.
It was pretty good.
That's funny stuff.
It was real good. Waffle House uniform.
Talking about movies, because you'll probably get a kick out of this. Marcus declared January the month of James Bond. So I said, let's start with number 1 and just go all the way through. So we're on what? 6 now. And
James Bond January?
It's January 9th, though.
I know.
We started late. We just got
started
into
late.
it. I knew you were
30
pointing.
James Bond.
There's 28.
Huh.
So we're right on
Yeah, you
top.
guys are a little bit behind.
So
Well, I figured we could double up on a rainy day. She'd never seen him.
I've never watched James Bond. I've seen parts of them, but I've never sat and watched through them. I'm actually obsessed. I really, really love the old original James Bonds.
Sean Connery was it.
He was the best.
Best, hands down. Sean Connery.
She didn't even recognize him.
I didn't think it was him.
So he actually grew into being better looking man
Down.
as he got older. Is what she says.
Kind of like, that's what's happening to me.
Can we get pictures of you when you were younger?
He looked just like that. He's looked just like this my whole life.
I just sent one to my
Same
mama.
mustache, same
come on,
hair,
man.
the same color, right out of the 80s.
Can you?
Ever.
Freaking Tom Selleck,
You
man.
guys are mean and hurtful.
I want to put it on our
sent an email.
YouTube.
Is anybody from your Buzz class still alive?
Oh, everybody's still.
Babe, how old do you think
How old do
he
you
is?
think I am? Wow.
No.
That is just wrong.
What Buzz class were you?
131. Me and Don Shipley, 7th Fleet sailor.
131.
Everybody loves, how,
Me and Donald.
God, I was real scared of that guy when he came. He was one of my instructors in SQT. He came out, demo god.
I'll find it.
I think
for
he
you.
had a freaking reel of primacord on his belt, tied to, he had it strapped to his belt. It was the first time I met him. He was out there teaching us how to blow stuff up.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Y'all still buddies?
Yeah. I haven't talked to him in a while. But
I talked to him the other day.
What
Him
Buzz,
and the missus.
what Buzz class was Gothro?
Oh, 150. Well, he's going to kick my ass for this. 154? 151?
Okay.
I didn't know there was going to be a test. He'll probably,
Yeah, I'll probably-
freaking let me know about it.
my
I
buzz
know.
class was the last hard one.
Now,
Last hard one, right?
Yeah. After
Marcus's,
that, I got really easy.
Marcus's swim buddy, Tyler Black, used to live down the street, and he would come over all the time and hang out. And for some reason, I thought, because Marcus was in 2 Buds classes, he was in 226 and 228. And for some reason, I thought Tyler was in 226. And I said that one time, and I don't think he ever forgave me. He was like, I was in Marcus's Buds. I was in 228. He was so mad.
He
that
didn't,
I
know
didn't-
he didn't know you were rollback?
He was
We
so
met
mad
in
that-
rollback land.
I punished him when he was a rollback.
That was the hardest thing, was rollback
Okay,
land.
can
I
you,
have to
let's
freaking-
talk
What are
about
you
that.
talking about, man? I was easy. What are you talking about?
That's where we met. God rest his mind. So my swim buddy Tyler's dead now. He died, but that's where we met, was in rollback land. And we used to get our asses whipped so bad because he's the only guy that didn't have a 6-pack.
I don't think he was ever.
He had that bad body disease. You remember what I'm talking about? Like, no matter how hard he worked, it's a thing. Guys have it. They can't help it.
I have
just-
it now.
He just, like, from his, just bad body disease. I don't know what else you call it, but that's what we called it. But he could run. God, dude, that freaking guy. That was why we got whipped so much. Because he looked like he was out of shape, but he wasn't. God rest his soul. I freaking miss him, but
I just punished.
yeah, he put us
I
through.
just punished you because it was fun.
It was fun.
So, what do your punishments look like when you see someone like Marcus in Buds and being a rollback? He had been hurt. What's that? What's going through your mind? How do you want to punish them?
Oh, I didn't punish them unless if they were a brown shirt. There's no real punishment you can give them, right? I mean, they already, my opinion, and at least in my head, I'm like, they're gonna make it. They just got to finish. The white shirts now, it's relentless. They go to the
It's
surf.
game on for them,
They
dude.
go to the
Yeah.
surf all the time, nonstop, as far as I'm concerned. But I didn't really deal with white shirts other than as rollbacks. I don't know what I think they went back into pre-training or something, but We had all the brown shirts.
Yeah, that's where I was.
So for me, it was, anytime he'd even look at me sideways, it was go ahead surf. And then when they would do something
freaking middle of the night, dude.
Which was probably every other day, then I was doing night school. So when we didn't have a night evolution, then I would make him and whoever else was with him meet me on the berm, and I'd sit up on the berm, drink coffee for my class.
This chair.
Yeah, I had a little
Torture the
lounge
crap
chair
out
I'd
of
bring
us,
up
man.
there, and then I'd just make them in and out of surf. It was awesome.
It was awesome. Now
It was fun.
That's
For me.
hilarious.
God, dude,
You had
we
a
talked
chair
about
on
this.
the berm?
Freaking yeah. Well, I had made the mistake of talking back to his wife accidentally. I didn't know it was her. Not that I ever talked back to a woman. And anyways, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, that was the middle of the night, though. I didn't
Yeah, it
torture
was
you
in the
normally
middle of the night.
As an instructor, everybody has their own ideas of what makes a Navy SEAL or what the common denominator is between all of them. What do you think is like a common thread?
Unwavered self-belief. That's why I wrote that book, Unwavered, because we teach college kids, and they're all whiny little thumb suckers. And one little thing doesn't go their way, and the next thing you know, they're quitting and calling mommy and daddy. And it all boils down to, do you believe you're going to do it or not? First day of buds, what do? Man, they stand you out on the beach and shoulder to shoulder, and everybody walks in the surf zone. I don't know how big your class is. Mine was 128, right? My class was 131, but we had 128 kids. And you look down, and I look at them, and all the buff dudes, the big guys with muscles on their muscles and everything. I'm like, oh, he'll make it. And I was not small, but I was not big. And none of those dudes were there.
First one's gone. I'll never forget it.
None
The
of them were
freaking
there.
yoked ones, the ones that look
What
like
you can't see is
bodybuilders.
what's inside of a guy's head, and it all has to do with belief. Do you believe? If you believe, you're going to make it no matter what happens. You just have to believe. And the Navy doesn't train that into you, right? That's where the Navy fails. When I say the Navy, I'm talking about spec war fails. Is they think they can start, a guy when he shows up for boot camp or something like that, and they're going to get him ready for buds, and it's like, see, I think that's the exact opposite. In other words, you don't need to introduce a guy to buds, right? Buds is an adult program, and it's a program that's designed to weed out those people who don't believe they can make it. It's not designed to make you a tougher person. It's not designed to give you self-belief. You get more self-belief so you can operate at an elite level instead of at an average everyday man level. But in order to, make it through buds, you're going to believe you can do it. When it hurts so bad that, you don't want to continue, if you believe you can make it, then you'll continue. I don't think it has anything to do with anything. We had one of the best runners on the planet in my class, and he quit 2 weeks in, And I mean, he literally was doing like 405 miles in boots.
God.
It was insane. Roberto Salazar's brother was in my class. He quit as soon as he could quit. I mean, so
The collegiate swimmers quit fast too. And it wasn't because of swimming either. It was always something else that got them.
Do you think it's because those people haven't had to work hard for what they've gotten?
Oh, we got rich kids too, though.
I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it has to do with,
I mean that by
we call
like
it,
natural
a lot
talent.
of people say, I don't think natural talent has anything to do with it either. Because I had zero natural talent in running, and I still made it through buds.
That's what I'm saying. Do you think that the people with natural talent that haven't had to put out, those people are the ones weeded out the quickest?
I mean, again, that's hard to tell what's in their head, right? But there are guys there that they can do more push-ups than me. They could do more pull-ups. They could run faster. I was one of the fastest swimmers in my class, so that wasn't really a deal. But
Because there are professionals that do make it.
when it came to everything else, it was just really boils down to, is that what you really want to do, and do you believe you can do it? And it doesn't matter what you look like when you get there. Doesn't matter how in shape you are, how out of shape you are. The longest I had ever run in my life, other than like a football practice or something, but it was like a mile. And guess when that was? When I took the screening test. I swam. I didn't run anywhere, So I got to buds, and I remember Master Chief Scarborough, Senior Chief Scarborough, heavy guy, belly, and he took us on that first run on the soft sand run, the old course, and everything was 2 miles, and I'm just like,
He ran his ass off.
I'm just like, man, it's not.
That was the
this
hard
is not
part.
going to be good for me. But it didn't make me quit. You know, people quit when they don't believe. It's just like anything else. It all boils down to belief.
What about the nights, like Marcus and I have talked about before, when the instructors would intentionally razz someone just to see if they'll quit, like uniform inspection or fuck with their helmets or whatever, like do things to just poke the bear?
Yeah, you don't need to do that in buds. Any instructor that does that's got a screw loose, in my opinion. You know, because buds is hard enough. Instructors don't need to make it harder. And that's why I loved it. I went there and I thought I was going to do 7 days a week and, you know, trash cans down the hallway and all that kind of stuff. Instructors showed up for the events. They facilitated the event. You know, they would yell at you when it was like a safety thing. But other than that, man, it was just like, you either want to do it and you desire to do it and you have the belief that you can do it, or you don't. And if you don't, it's just like when Hell Week, you know, I ran a lot of Hell Weeks, man. And the kids would go through the proctor, then they'd go through the class LPO, and then they'd go through the chief, the corpsman, and then me. Or maybe it was the corpsman, the chief, and then me. You know, the shift OIC. I didn't even ask them a question. It was like, you want to quit? Yeah. Okay, so I guess that's a question. And it was like, see you later, man. I'm not talking nobody out of quitting. Nobody. Instructors want to spend time trying to talk somebody out of quitting. That's great. But once you get that, I'm going to quit in your head, man. They might put you in for another day or two and get you to go back in, but you're going to quit anyway.
What evolution pulls more guys out in Hell Week?
Man, it's first and second night, right? It's breakout, which, you know, after 3 hours of that stuff, everybody, you know, that a lot of guys that didn't really think that combat was going to be like that, and granted, it's nowhere near combat, but it scares a bunch of dudes, number one. And then Steel Pier.
Steel Pier, right?
Yep.
What's Steel Pier?
That's the one. And it's
You go to SBU piers, a big long steel floating piers out there, and you're in and out of the water and laying on that pier from, you know, from 10 at night till sun comes up.
Sun comes up. You got to wave hello. You wave goodbye to the sun in the water, and then you have to wave hello to it. We're
So
still
you
in the
are
water.
in and out of the water and on that steel pier all night long. I can remember my hip flexors so bad.
Turn the fans on
because of shivering.
and the ice. They pull ice ice water all over us, and just
it was so cool.
It's a mass exit during our Hell Week.
And it was just one dude after another quitting. But that's the job, right? The job is being miserable, cold, wet, tired, and you still have to perform. And it goes back to World War II. It doesn't go back to anywhere else, man. The guy who designed Hell Week was a survivor of the Bataan Death March.
Yeah.
And he's like, man, if I can stay up for 5 days and do nonstop physical, you know, work, if you will, then he can make it through just about anything. And I truly believe in my heart of hearts that's the only thing that separates us and every other special force out there is Hell Week.
Is our Hell Week,
I didn't
right?
know that that's who designed Hell Week. Do you know his name?
Yeah, I want to say it was Draper Kaufman, but I'm probably wrong. I did know at some point, but it's been a while since I've really had to pull that out. But it was a World War II fella, you know.
Was he a UDT?
No, I don't think so. He ended up in that world, yes. But
Okay.
at that time, I don't think he was.
Because before that, it was just like Scouts and
Raiders.
something.
Scouts and Raiders,
Yeah.
Scouts and Raiders.
OSS, NCDUs, and UDT. Those
UDTs.
4 units combined together made the current
What we got now?
SEAL team today. But Hell Week is what separates us from the rest of them, and it gives you a weird mental ability that no other training is going to give you. Now, I'm not saying the other special forces
They're hard.
I'm not saying they're not
Yeah, they're hard.
talented. I'm not saying they can do what they can do, but they are not SEALs. They never will be SEALs. They can talk about, well, we do everything SEALs do. No, you don't. So it's not the same. So maybe I'm biased, obviously, but it's definitely not the same. And that's why SEALs get so bent when you get somebody that either says he was a SEAL and isn't, or says, I was in so-and-so and we're just like SEALs. And it's like, well, if you're just like SEALs, then why are you comparing yourself to SEALs? You know, everybody compares themselves to SEALs. SEALs don't compare themselves to anybody else. You know.
What was your hardest part in Hell Week? Was it still pure?
No, actually, I got cellulitis really, really bad. I think it was this left hand, and my hand ballooned up, and then my forearm split open.
Oh, no, did you have a barrack?
Huh?
Did you have to go to the chamber?
No, actually, they just gave me antibiotics and something.
Back in the water?
No,
There's some
actually,
Motrin?
during Hell Week, they gave me nothing. It wasn't until the next day, I think Saturday or no, because we secured at like 6 in the evening on Friday. And
There's only one. How many classes have no bell hells? 141, I know, has a no bell hell. Warrant Officer Faisal, you remember him? You remember that name?
Yeah.
Draper Kaufman.
He would always talk about that.
Was I right?
Draper Kaufman is who created Hell Week.
Good pull.
Man,
Passed your
look at
test,
that.
man. How about that? You had one answer to get right, bro, and you freaking nailed it.
Good
Good job.
It's Hell Week,
Freaking
man.
The Kaufman.
So speaking of Hell Week and your instructor status, we talked a little bit before the show about leadership. What are some of your like key leadership abilities? Like, what does a leader have to have?
Yeah, would you recommend all the guys go through being a BUD instructor? I never got a chance to do it.
No.
Don't do it?
No, I guess should operate, man. I went to be a BUD instructor because
And
I
I
wanted
get
to get
that.
a degree.
Yeah, I'm talking.
You know,
When we pull the guys
I
offline.
was a new warrant, and they wouldn't let me do anything else. So I went to.
Is that when you got sent there? Right when you put that on? No. Oh, check.
I left Team 3 and put on warrant. Went to my little warrant school. Checked into BUDs. Was a phaso.
So as far as instructors at BUDS training, I mean the leadership qualities, they got to be seasoned,
Well, look,
senior.
leadership qualities, man. Like I said, that's the whole Panama thing really changed my whole outlook on leadership. So I can use my first couple of platoons. I had my very first platoon. I'm fresh out of BUDS, but I'm on fire. I mean, I loved it. I loved showing up at the team area, and everything I could get my hands and do, I was doing, which is, most guys are, but I was like over the top. And so I was probably not hard to handle, but I was definitely, in my first fit rep that I got from my first platoon lieutenant, he said, lacks a refined sense of tact. Because for me, it was everything that we did. One, it's to go in and not necessarily kill the enemy, but it's kill the enemy and infrastructure, right? It's a cycle. We are a psychological weapon, in my opinion. And the current battle over there in Israel right now is, I think, a good thing. We can talk about collateral damage and what's acceptable and what's not and all those good things. But in my first platoon, man, for me, it was just like everything that we do we have to be so good at what we do that we can scare the enemy out of the water. We can scare the enemy out of the woods, just like the men with green faces in Vietnam, But on the flip side, we have to save our own people. We have to do it safely. We have to do it, we have to train so hard that no matter what we do, we're way better at it than anyone else. And we have to train so hard that when we do actually go into combat's easier than the training, if that makes sense, which is hard to do, but it's doable. So as a leader, man, you got a lot. So my first platoon, I had a old Vietnam senior chief who was really, really interested in drinking, and that was great, but never taught us a thing. Mm-hmm. My platoon lieutenant and my platoon ensign were both the type of guys that it's like, what's in it for me? Kind of a situation. And they weren't really interested in doing anything other than just kind of making it through to deployment. So case in point, we had 14 35 horsepower motors. We only used 35s on the East Coast. 14, and at the end of the deployment, we had one that worked. And nobody cared. Nobody, except for me. And we were like 3 days away from redeploying back to the States. And some general wanted to see a rubber duck. We had to do 2 double ducks. So 2 C-130s, 4 boats.
So we tie our boats together and drop them out of the back of an airplane. It's called a duck.
Send them out, parachute, guys jump out, all that stuff. We had one motor that worked. And it was we were lucky that once the boats and the men hit the water, and he's like, everybody's safe, yeah. And he's like, okay, let's go drink. And the general took off because We had to get towed back in by the old Sea Foxes because none of our motors worked, but nobody cared. And to me, in my head, I'm like, we're supposed to be ready for war up until the day we redeploy back, you know? And we were not ready for war. The next platoon, man, I had a stint in between where I did some training. CQB was just coming to the teams, all that good stuff. Anyway, I get into another platoon, and we had 6 E6s in that platoon. OIC was
How many new guys? One?
Maybe 5 or 6. So each E6, because the OIC did not want to, A, give authority to one E6, and B, didn't want to hurt the other 5 E6's little, you know, self-images. He gave each E6 one guy to be in charge of. She had 6 LPOs, with all in charge of one guy each. And he'd call down, and because we were on a med cruise, he'd call down and say, hey, you know, Randy, can you get this done? But then he'd also call 2 other E6s and be like, can you get this done? Can you get that? So 3 of us are trying to get the same job done with our 1 E5 in tow, and we find out, and we're just like, I mean, what is this? You know, it was just, just
a waste of time.
The training that we did in that platoon, everybody was more interested in running and running fast and doing those kind of things, and nobody was interested in actually being out to operate well, you know. And so it was another platoon where I'm just like, wow. But the thing is they're all really nice guys, but we had guys that should not have kept their tridents, should not, and they did. And everybody, well, I don't want to kick a guy out because he worked so hard to get where he is, but it's like, if he's not cutting it, he needs to go. He needs to be gone, you know. So I had all these little lessons in my head when I finally got into that platoon where we went to Panama. And I actually remember calling Tim Basilbeck, who was the ops boss at the time, and I went to language school. And then he's like, what do you want to do when you get back? And I called him every week because I remember him kind of complaining. Another guy that he sent never called back. And so he just kind of disappeared from the teams somewhere. But so I called back every week. I'm like, hey, ops boss, it's me. What do you want to do? And I go, I want to be in a platoon, and I want it to be full of new dudes, and I want to be the only E6. And that was my thing. It was like, I just want to be the only E6 in the platoon. So I did that. You know, he came back and he gave me a platoon, and it was full of brand new dudes, and they had been together 3 months, and they were always in trouble. Always.
Got what you asked for.
Got what I asked for, right? Yep. He's like, you got your hands cut out. Or your...
It's like having a bunch of puppies.
Yeah. He's like, you got your work cut out for you. And I'm just like, no, this is going to be good. And I can't say that the methods that I used to get him to gel were the right. I wouldn't do it again that way, but tell you what, man, we had 16 guys that were unbelievably close. And it was the best experience I've ever had in my life in the teams. And it wasn't all me. It was the right group of guys that came together at the exact right time.
What methods did you use?
So I made us, I'm a anti-mandatory fun guy. In other words, you know, I'm not into, you know, dinner parties and let's get all the platoon to do what they need to do. And, you know, on Friday nights, we're all going to get together and all that kind of stuff. But what I would do is on the way out of the team area, out of Gate 5, there was JB's Gallery of Girls. So I'd make them all meet there. And we had 2 guys that were very religious, and I'm like, you're coming in. You can turn your backs to the girls, but you're coming in. And we would just sit there and drink and talk and that kind of thing. But so that was a method I wouldn't do now, but it
worked in that time.
It was, I think a lot of it is that they knew that my desire was for their best interest, right? We're going to train hard, but we need to stick together. You need to know why you're doing what you're doing. There's so many leaders out there that they don't want to tell you why you're doing stuff. Just do it, you know? And it's like, no.
It's different when you know what you're fighting for.
No, it's like, do this, and this is why you're doing it now, and this is why you're doing it to this level, in my opinion, right? So it's leadership 101 but you're also, not only you're training that guy and you're teaching him. My biggest thing was the outboard motors. Told Chris Kinney was our OBM guy, and I'm just like, I want to take any motor off the rack, put it in the water, and it better start in the first pull. Better. every time, all the time, no matter how long we were together. And we were together a long time. And man, I think once, motor didn't start in the first pull. And I remember him jumping from one boat to the other, jumped in there and he pushed the dude out of the way and yanked it, and it started.
Second pretty tough feat, because those things, they're made not to run.
But he was on it all the time.
You know what I mean?
He was.
Those things break down.
He understood what it meant, right? Because it's life or death for us. You can't be in a shore break in Alaska or a shore break in some other godforsaken country, and the shore break is 10 feet high in a boat with all your stuff in it, and if that shore break hits your boat, everything's going to scatter.
It's so important. When they would drop us out of the submarine and we'd come to the surface, submarine keeps going. And if you're sitting on the surface, 100 out in the middle of nowhere, and that motor doesn't crank, what you're saying, it's...
And so it's life or death. So you got to teach them that. Hey, this is why the motors need to work all the time, every time. And if they don't, this is what, we're going to die. And people just don't take things that seriously. And they'd look at me and they're like, Randy, you're insane. And it's like, no, I'm not insane, because these guys need to know the stakes, of everything that we're doing. And we got that group of dudes together, and it was phenomenal. It was just amazing. We didn't have a chief. I was the LPO of the platoon. And
how'd that work?
It worked out really well. I ended up making chief on the deployment, but it was because of Panama.
Did you know that stress could be the sneaky culprit behind your weight loss struggles? If you're dealing with stress, lean might just be the solution you're looking for. Chronic stress wreaks havoc on your blood sugar, which can cause your body to store excess fat. And stress can also lead to a slower metabolism, which fuels weight gain. And we all know about stress eating and sugar cravings. Now for the good news. The study's ingredients in lean have been shown to maintain healthy blood sugar levels, and they help optimize metabolism to keep your appetite under control. If your life is a little bit stressful and you want to lose weight, go add lean to your healthy diet and exercise lifestyle. And here's something special just for you. You can enjoy a 15% discount and free shipping when you visit takelean.com and enter promo code TNQ at checkout. That's TNQ at takelean.com, and take charge of your weight and stress levels with lean. Visit takelean.com today.
But it was hard because as a non-chief, chiefs like to razz you. But there were 28 chiefs at the team, and when we lost our chief, because he just wasn't able to keep up. He had been in the diving community for a really long time. It was just kind of his last hurrah, and it just didn't work out. We went to every other chief, senior chief and master chief in Team 2, and me and the platoon commander, Ed Coughlin, after we lost chief, which was, I want to say, July-ish, August-ish before Panama, which was December of '89. And none of them wanted to be in the platoon because we were really tight. But I let the reins off of those dudes, I mean, we were in the team area, man. If there was something going on in the team area, man, we were in it. We were loud, but we had a lot of fun, and we were good. When there was one other platoon, it was Leif Patala's platoon. I forget the name of the OIC. Great dude. Had been through BUD/S 3 times. That's a story in and of itself. But they were a fantastic platoon, and they had all deployed together so many different times. It was crazy, and our goal was to be better than they were. And the guys responded to that. I think people respond to leadership that's, that is training them to replace you, right? So I guess leadership 101 lesson 2 is you need to be training everybody that is below you to replace you. Everybody. Because you're going to be gone in a year, 2 years, whatever. You come back and you're going to fleet up to some other job. Somebody's got to replace you. And if you kind of hold back and don't teach them everything they need to know, then what are you doing? You're not setting up the team. You're not setting up your group. You're not setting up that next platoon for success if you're holding back info, And there's a difference between they have to go out and do the nug work and fix the dive rigs and everything else while you're doing planning. But when you get the opportunity, they need to know They need to know what's up. They need to know why you're doing it, and they need to know, what's at stake. And they need to know that every little detail of everything they do counts, and it saves lives, and it saves our lives, Even
in the team, sometimes you think what we get assigned to do is trivial, but it's not. I mean, you're a Navy SEAL, so anything that comes down on top of us is important.
Which, that's is it busy work or is it,
Yeah.
So that same platoon with the 6 LPOs, if one guy, so let's say it's a Friday evening and we're supposed to dive Monday morning, and throughout the week, they hadn't been able to adjust the demand valves and do all the stuff they need to do, the dive rig maintenance. And one guy had to do that because he was the only one with the cert to do it. And we didn't have a second guy. The whole platoon stayed. Literally sitting in a platoon up till midnight together. For what? Because this one dude has to stay and do all that work. What he should have done as the leader, he should have stayed. And he should have helped the guy, handed him wrenches, do that kind of stuff. Send everybody else home, because your time back in the team area is precious, right? But it's more than gold, especially for the guys that are married.
I don't know how they do that.
But
those married guys?
The time in the team area, man, that's when you're back and you could be home, that's precious. And the guys, all that did to me and the other dudes in that platoon was make us bitter. Because we were just like, why are we here? Well, we're supporting that other guy. No, you're not. You're just being a jerk, And I didn't get it. I still don't get that mentality, So it's like, hey, if I'm working on something and you can only put 2 hands on it, everybody else needs to go home. So when I became the LPO, man, I stay. I get there first. I leave last. And as the leader, the guy that's running the show, man, that's, I'll help who needs help. But every second that I could let those dudes go so they could be home, the single guys need that same time. They need to go, chase girls. They need to go detox, do whatever they need to do. So for me, it was like, man, if we are in the team area, there's no busy work, nothing. We don't just do work. And, when Rudy Bosch was the CMC of 2, it was tough to let guys go before cleanup in the afternoon, but I would do it all the time, man. It's like, you, and you, man, we don't need you, you can go. Because Rudy didn't really count dudes at cleanup. He counted them at muster, but not really at cleanup. So but I couldn't let the whole platoon go. But there were days where I did, where it was just kind of like, you guys go home, because we aren't doing it.
You told me that the other day. I didn't know that Rudy was the master chief at 2 for
25 years straight, 1962 to 1987.
What a great run.
He was the CMC at 2.
That's unheard of. That's not even a thing. That's not even a real thing.
Couldn't happen again.
No.
Is he still alive?
Rudy Bont,
no,
he passed away last year.
Year before last.
He was 45 years in the Navy day for day.
Wow.
45 years.
He was one little survivor.
He has such an amazing story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He passed
and he was
Yeah.
He was fantastic, dude. Absolutely fantastic. And I learned so much just from him, because he took care of the guys. We get $7 a day per diem, and he'd be like, give me your check. Like, what? Hand him a check. He'd go cash them all, which he could do back then. And then he would get some white shirts and buds, fly them out, and they would cook for the platoon. If you're, up at AP Hill for 8 weeks, you ate like a king. 3 meals a day. And Rudy just had those dudes working nonstop. It was incredible.
I thought it was the best life, because you're training, and then in between that you get to eat.
And it was incredible. Team 2 was the best place ever, for me anyway.
Bud's team 2.
Whatever. I didn't see it that way.
You're a 1 too, right?
No, I went to 3.
No, that's right.
But
I never went to 2.
I don't know, man. There's so
you always
many,
hear that though. No Fun 1 and Bud's team 2. Because they're the first 2
original
teams.
Yeah. But I think Herschel Davis was the CMC of 1.
Yeah.
And then Rudy was the CMC of 2. But
Is Herschel still alive?
I believe so. Yeah. But they ran it. They didn't let the OICs and the AOICs and the chiefs and all that. They didn't let them run their dudes into the ground. If you're back in a team area, you PT as a team, which I truly believe in. All of this stuff they're doing now is taking away from team unity, in my opinion.
They don't have to do that? They don't do team PT anymore?
I don't know one team that's doing it now. Somebody said SDB.
I thought that was
doing
we
it,
definitely do it.
But I know that there are many teams that don't do that.
Especially in Hawaii.
You know, but you would PT every morning, and I can even recite what the PTs were at Team 2.
All right, let's hear it.
Monday morning typically was just PT and a run. Tuesday was always, of course, right? So you do
Over the water or a regular one?
no, you had 4 smalls and 1 big. I think you did the big one first and 4 smalls, and then you ran. It's like a 5-mile run after that. Wednesday was kind of a free day, maybe. Thursdays was always a swim, and Friday was always a state park run. So it was 9.5 miles.
We have
Every Friday.
at STVs.
And
We
Rudy
had
did every one of them. Every one of them.
Friday run swims. We had to
I
swim
checked
around
into-
Fort Island
when I
and then
checked
run
into the teams,
13
he was
miles.
57.
Still doing all that?
Yep.
Good for him.
When I
man.
checked into Team 2, man, he was 57 years old, still running, PTing, swimming. Check the watch bill.
Get a haircut, right?
Get a haircut and check
Get
it.
a haircut and check the watch bill.
Kind of funny. So, I don't know. I kind of went way off the deep end on the whole leadership thing, but I think it made a huge difference. So, you know, you talk about buds and all that.
Did you
kind
get to
of stuff.
stack your platoon, or were they just delivered to you?
No, man. That particular platoon where I was the LPO, and we ended up doing Panama on the first Gulf War. I just, like I said, I got back. I was still in my whites, and Beausoleil was like, "Hey, your platoon's in cleaning some weapons." They had just gotten back from Seattle diving at the sub base, and what is it, Bremerton or whatever. And one of the dudes that were on the bus, and security dude comes in, and they had limpets. And they had their dive rigs, and they're in the rubber, and the guy's like, well, what's all this? And one of the brain surgeons, I won't mention his name, but he knows who he is, was like, well, this is a bunch of bombs. We're going to put them on your submarines. And oh, man.
That'll go over well.
They ended up getting kicked out and sent home. And so I think that was what Beausoleil was talking about, you know. But if you treat them right,
Well, you can't have
when
a team
you
guy
dress
that's
them
candor,
down
right?
and you
Yeah.
scream at them, and they understand why you're screaming at them, then it's completely different.
Different, yeah.
It's just kind of like when you were a knucklehead at Bud's, man. You always had a smile on your face. I can remember that, and it was funny because it was just like, no matter what you do to some of these guys, it's.
Because some of them we don't know you're serious until you get to that level, and then you'll be like, hey, man, you didn't have to yell at me. I get you. All right, I'll do it. And then they'll fall right in line. Those hard-headed sons of guns you ever come across, man.
Maybe. But
So the last time you were on here, you talked about Panama, but can we go into it again?
absolutely, yeah. I mean, that platoon was the best experience of my life. And even now, I like Chris died. I text with him probably every day. It's odd if I miss a day. And he was my dive buddy. So that all started in July for us. So we had gotten together. We had a platoon lieutenant that was injured. We had gone on a trip to Puerto Rico, and he injured his what's that tendon that runs across the bottom of your foot?
So, no, that's not right.
Anyway, I'm not a doctor, but he was injured and he couldn't run, so he couldn't participate in anything. So we had no chief, and it was just me. And the AOIC was so new. He was a spanker. So, I mean, all these guys were maybe, 6 months out of buds. Just
So
got
this
their
is when
tridents.
you had your team where you said you wanted to be the only
Correct.
E6 with a bunch
Right.
of new guys.
So it was in June. We were supposed to start our land warfare phase, and we did, but the OIC could not participate, and the chief was still there, but he didn't participate. Well, he could, but he didn't. And so it was just me with all these dudes all brand new spankers, man, running around, shooting, doing all sorts of crazy stuff. I remember the first evolution we did, we went to the pop-up targets, and I'm a big iron sights dude. We didn't have all the 8 cogs and all the stuff they have now, but I'm just like, you're going to learn to shoot this thing, and we're going to do combat zeros. So for 5.56, it's 25 yards, point aim, point impact is the same at 250. It's point aim, point impact. And I'm like, that's how we're going to zero everything. We're going to go to the pop-ups until you can shoot the pop-ups and not miss. So you know where to aim. So at 150 yards, aim for the dude's belt line because the bullet is above the, point at the sight line. So we just did that, and I remember we did that for 2 days. We were supposed to shoot 130,000 rounds in AP Hill, and I think we were supposed to do that in the 7 weeks or 8 weeks we were up there, and we did it in 2. Called back to Carly and was like, hey, we're out of bullets. He yelled at me and sent more bullets, you know, and it was one of those things where we trained super hard. We'd wake up every morning and we'd PT and run to the showers. Then we'd hit Aunt Jenny's for pancakes. And then we'd hit the range from noon to 6, come back from, 6 to 7 and go from 7 to midnight every day. Every day.
Doesn't that sound like a kick-ass life?
But on the weekends, they drove back to the beach. Every weekend, they drive back to the beach. And then it was weird. So Carly shows up one day and we're just starting to do like movement drills. Carly shows up, the CO, with Ed Coughlin in tow. Ed Coughlin was a tall, older lieutenant that was in the Buds class ahead of me, 130. And, excuse me, prior EOD guy. So he had like 10 years in EOD. And he's there, and I'm like, hey, Ed, what are you doing here? And he's like, well, we're gonna talk about that. So Carly shows up in the evening with Ed and leaves with the platoon lieutenant. I'm not gonna mention his name because I don't know if he listens to this, and I don't want him to feel bad because it wasn't his fault. So, but I didn't know. I'm like, why are they replacing him? I mean, we got a good lieutenant. We don't need another one. And then Ed started, he's like, I'm gonna see what you guys are doing, and we'll do that for a couple of weeks, and then I'll start changing things. And it's like, I think a good leader's supposed to do that, right? It's like, just see what's happening, and then weeks down the road, we'll start incorporating the way I do things, It took Ed like 10 minutes. His 2 weeks was 10 minutes because he didn't like the way I was doing things. And his experience level when it came to hand signals and movement techniques and peels and all this stuff and open terrain, closed terrain, was way ahead of me. And I was just doing my best, and we'd do a little drill, and he'd come over and, okay, why are you doing that? Why are you doing this? And finally it was like 9 o'clock at night. And Ed, he's probably 4 or 5 inches taller than me. And I remember staring at his, chin, and I just poked him in the chest, and I go, how about this? How about you just tell me what you want done, and that's what we'll do. Because this whole thing of you questioning everything that I'm doing won't work. Your experience level's way above mine. And man, we were like best friends after that. It was insane. And he taught us things, man, that I to this day have never forgotten. But man, we trained so stinking hard. But the reason why he was there was evident 2 weeks later. 2 weeks later, I want to say it was a Wednesday or Thursday. And we were out on the range, and Ed comes over and he's like, dude, we got to go back to the beach. And I'm like, for what? He goes, Carly wants to see us. And I'm like, did we do something wrong? And he's like, no, we didn't do anything wrong, but he needs to see us. So me, Ed, and Manboy Simpkins, the AOIC, take off, go to the beach. And we get back there at 11, 12 at night, whatever it was. And Carly's in his office, and he has this image, and it's of a port, and there's 6 or 8 patrol boats, and he's like, you're over here, they're over there, what are you gonna do? And I'm just like, of course, I'm the one that's talking. I'm just like, it's easy, combat swimmer, can we go now? And he's like, yeah, not so fast. And then he explained to us the whole thing that our deployment wasn't supposed to start until June. It's a year away. It's June, July now. It was in July when he called us in. And the platoon that was ahead of us, they were deploying in December. But Operation Blue Spoon, which was the op plan for Panama, that was rolling along, man. And I didn't know anything that was happening. All I just know is he's just like, you will finish your land warfare, and then you're going to roll right into combat swimmer, and that's all you're doing, right? And so you're doing 10 weeks at the hill.
Yeah, how fired up were the kids about that?
What's that?
How fired up were the boys about that?
Didn't tell them. So there's a reason. We didn't tell them because nobody could know what was going on, right? So we went back to the hill. I think we slept at home that night, went back in the morning, and just got right back into it. And Carly's like, you can have as many bullets, explosives as you want, do whatever you need to do. Just call the master chief, and he knows what's going on, so he'll send it to you, man. We trained as hard as we could train, and as soon as we got back from that, it was right into combat swimmer, right? And it wasn't a secret at the team that I didn't like doing combat swimmer. I was a great swimmer, but when we talk combat swimmer, we're talking about diving with the dragger and a compass board, depth gauge, watch, not a GPS, nothing. And take a chart, draw some lines, go dive. So I don't want to talk specific tactics here in this forum because I don't want the enemy to ever hear it, because there's still guys active duty and they're probably employing those tactics. And I think a good leader that's out there wanting to write a book should follow that same path, right? We don't need to divulge how we do stuff. The stories are out there. Hey, this is what happened, and this is the heroic things that happened, and these were the things that happened. But talking about specific techniques, I don't think so. I'll refrain from doing that.
It's fine.
In the story, but the story, we roll in a combat swimmer, and you know as well as I do, what's the first thing you do? Pace line, right?
Kick count.
So you got to have an accurate speed. You can't do speed, time, distance from A to B without knowing how fast you go. So we put a pace line in, and we made a really nice one with 5-gallon buckets and full of cement and all this stuff. And normally you do it how many times?
3 in the beginning.
3. And then do you ever get back on the pace line?
No normal team guy does unless you're absolutely made to do it, because it's the worst.
So guess what?
I can't even believe we're talking about it, man. I hadn't thought about that in forever.
For me, knowing that our HR op is going to be a combat swimmer op, I'm like, we're leaving it in, because that's what happened, right? We go and we do the pace line 3 or 4 times, and the guys start pulling it out.
What's talking about is like, if you close your eyes and drop underwater, you know how many kicks it takes to get 100 yards.
Exactly.
At the minute you hit that kick, whatever it is, 200, 300, 400, 100, whatever it is, you immediately turn. You don't second guess it. No. I mean, it's like, we can't see anything. So you literally have to sit there and count how many. That's all you're doing.
French count breaths.
The breath. Yeah. Underwater, literally for hours, you're counting.
What if you forget?
Well, we don't forget.
That's a problem. That's why you have a buddy, though, and you got to have a way to communicate that.
If he's even paying attention, because normally he's sitting on the top. He's over the top of you like this, and I mean, so you got some shit bags that'll stop kicking, and then your other buddy's dragging them. I can't believe we're talking about diver. I hadn't thought about this in forever. It's the hardest thing to do under what we do underwater.
So normally you do you get down there and you kind of confirm your number of kicks, but for the new guys, which we had a platoon full of new guys, they didn't know what their kicks were. Now, granted, they probably did it in buds. I don't know, but so they started pulling the pace line. I'm like, no, man, we're gonna do that every dive, and they're looking at me like, what?
You started every dive like that?
We're gonna do it every dive. Some dives we did it afterwards, but every dive. So we do 2 dives every dive. And we did 35 practice dives for that op. Yeah, which is a lot. And 35 pace dives. 70 dives total to get ready for that op.
Did y'all join? Was that make that one big dive, like from a kick count into the op?
No, normally they would go down, they'd do it until they were ready, and then they'd come up off surface, have a surface interval, and then we go do whatever dive we were going to do. But we dove, and then we dove in the creek for, I want to say it was 2 weeks, and then we lifted and shifted for 6 weeks and went up to Newport, Rhode Island, and dove in Newport. So here's leadership, right? It's like in the creek in the wintertime, it's cold, right? So we're coming in the tail end of summer, that kind of thing. So it really wasn't too bad. But you go to Newport, and it's September-ish, October-ish, working on into November, and you're wearing full 1/4 inch rubber. So you got a 1/2 inch of rubber and torso to neck. Everywhere else is 1/4 inch. But I know in my head, we're going to Panama. The water's 80 to 90 degrees typically. So we're not going to be diving in this. So we have to have a way to make sure that we do one dive in whatever we're going to wear to do the dive op. Now, I'm not a big proponent. No one should be doing combat swimmer wearing camis over their rubber, which is a big thing. We're going to wear camis in case we got to go in E&E. And it's like, man, if you go in E&E as a diver, you should be swimming somewhere.
We would only transition to our camis after we got over.
I don't think. The only time I would even think about bringing them with me and rolling them up, maybe putting them on a limpet backpack trailer or something, would be if I had to go do a recon, and that was the op where I dove, did a recon, had to get back in the water and dive out.
Or if you jumped in real fast.
But I think a diver should just have dive stuff on, right? It's because you're talking hours and hours underwater, multiple targets sometimes, and you got all that drag on, man. It is impossible to keep a 1 knot pace with camis on and everything else for 3 hours. You can't do it. Some guys could, but the majority of guys can't. So for me, it was that we had to figure out, what are we going to do? What, do we take weapons? And now guys are diving with CAR-15s and sniper rifle, and it's like, what are you thinking, man? So I think what they do now isn't the combat swimmer that we did back then. So we're talking about 35 years ago, but it was as slick as you can be, man. You want to be snot under the water, right?
I mean, you think camis are terrifying to look at when we come through the door? When you're dressed in slick black, when we come out of the water looking like that,
Well,
I mean, that's the sexiest shit I thought.
I'll
When we come out of the water
I'll
doing
get
the
on
go
another
plats.
tirade about what I think special forces are for and what we should use them for here in a minute. But, you know, so we did the pace line. We did all these practice dives. And as we got done up at Newport, we were doing 3 dives a day up there, typically.
And people always ask, like, how hard do you guys train for an op? I mean, this is what we're explaining right now. This, for one op, this is what we had to do.
So in our normal kind of dive stuff, we do 2 or 3 weeks. Now Team 2 is different. Team 2 had to work with the Commando Bear and had to work with the Germans and stuff. So they were always better. And you had Chuck Williams and Aaron
They're great
Griffin,
divers, right?
who were the 2 gurus on combat swimming, because they had spent most time in all the other countries diving with them. And those other divers are great.
And Gothro was one of those guys. He spent a lot of time with us.
Yeah. So, you know, for me, being a platoon dude, you know, they would yell and scream at us or me if they were support and they were helping us out and they were guiding us. But in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, that's great, but this is what we got to get ready for. So as we progressed, we came back down to Little Creek and we dove every night in Little Creek for about 2 weeks. And I was trying to use the same bearings and distances I could for that dive up that was going to happen in Panama, because we had already planned it. So we had a plan from the platoon that was getting ready to go do it. And I think this is where Carly had made his choice on our platoon doing the Panama deal or that other platoon, because it was going to be close. They would have to deploy December 5th.
How'd they figure that out? A coin flip?
What's that?
Who went?
I'll tell you. When it came down to the plan, that platoon did not believe that they could execute the combat swimmer attack.
I'll check.
So their plan was to drive over in Zodiac.
They said that's friggin' honest.
60s mounted on these tripods, and they were going to shoot at these boats, which you're SEALs. SEALs should be swimming underwater with the psychological advantage, not driving around in a rubber boat with a machine gun on it. And so that was one of Carly's main decisions, was like, okay, if the leadership of that platoon, yes, they have a dive plan. Yes, they've kind of trained to it. But this other platoon is doing nothing but train to it. I think it was easy for him. He was kind of like, okay, yeah, you guys are deploying December 5th. Instead of you staying back, you're going to deploy, and we're going to put the onus on this other platoon.
All right, let's dive into the essentials for your workout. Sure, headphones are pretty crucial, but you know what truly elevates your routine? It's called Fitbod. I swear by this app every time I hit the gym because it takes all the guesswork out of planning my workouts. Every morning I wake up to a fresh notification with my new workout of the day tailored just for me. I actually just got back from the gym, had a really nice upper body day, and I am feeling it. And with over 1,000 workouts and demonstration videos, I never get bored or have to second guess any movements because Fitbod shows me exactly what to do and how to do it right there in the app. So whether you're a seasoned athlete or you're just starting out, make sure to track your workouts with Fitbod and let's stay up to date, guys. Score an exclusive 25% off your subscription, or you can try the app for free at fitbod.me/TNQ. That's fitbod.me/TNQ.
So I'm not patting my back, man. Remember, I had a lieutenant who was incredible. The AYC was incredible. And there I was in between them and, 13 unbelievable men that, although they were all young, I was actually one of the younger guys in the platoon I think I was the third youngest as the LPO. But they were all incredible, and they were all great operators, and they all had great attitudes, and they trained hard, and they never, when they did complain, it was like complaining to your best friend. It wasn't, you know, having some whiny dude who was just constantly against everything. So we finished up with all the diving that we could do, and then General Lindsay wanted an exercise. So Rudy's now the SOCOM Sergeant Major, I guess you could say, of the E9, and Lindsay was the general down there. And anyway, long story short, he wanted to exercise this whole op plan down in Florida. So you had, you know, 10,000 special forces guys that were all doing their 8-hour missions within the same week. So here I am going, okay, Florida, man, great. Nice and warm, sunny beaches, you know, all that good stuff. And then so our plan, or at least my plan, was we're going to wear the 321s. Remember the
I got some out
surf
there.
suits, right? It's just 3 mil, 2 mil, 1 mil. We're going to wear those when we go do this dive in Florida, in Herbert. And then we'll dive that in Panama, because we might be hot in Panama, but we won't be super hot with our thick rubber on, right? So we went down. I didn't even bring I brought a poncho liner to sleep in. I didn't realize it got cold in Florida.
What month was it?
This is December.
It's cold.
Yeah, like
It's
mid-December,
cold, yeah.
right? So you go down there, and we went down and we did that dive, and I think everybody hyped out. I don't think one guy. It's a long dive. So we were in the water for over 2 hours, and we were all hyped out. It took me like a day to warm up. It was horrible because it was so cold down there. And then I get back and I'm in my cot with my poncho liner on, with every piece of clothes I could put on because I was so cold.
Are there pictures of this? Is there
I
any
have
photo proof?
only a few, but I can give you one or two. It's just me and Chris Dye. But so we had done all these dives, right? And we had divvied everybody up in pairs, and there wasn't one dive pair that we questioned as far as their ability to do this dive, because there were 8 boats supposed to be in water. We had 8 pairs. Each pair would hit one boat, and then they'd go to a different boat, and we had it all timed.
Oh,
So you have redundancy, right? So now you still got 2 charges on each boat, and if one pair doesn't make it for whatever reason, they have a rig fill up with water, or a guy has an issue with oxygen toxicity or whatever, then there's at least going to be 1 charge on every boat if you have some redundancy. And that was just the expectation, man. Is everybody's diving. Everybody. You know, there was no other way around it. Anyway, we did our practice dive, and they were super happy. It went off really well. And then me and 3 other guys stayed down there in order to do Fulton recoveries with dummies, the C-130 with the big feeler, would pick a guy up. James Bond,
Like from Batman too. Remember in Batman they did it.
Yeah, James Bond has one of those.
Yeah, they do. It's the skyhook, the snatch and grab, where you just stand there and the plane flies by. And
So we stayed down there and do
what's
that. But here's what happened. What we didn't know. There was a lot of things we didn't know. We didn't know what any of the other, units out there, what their involvement was in Panama. All we knew was that we were going to do the dive op. Team 4 had Patia Airfield, which I'm not going to discuss the merits of doing that or not, but attacking an airfield, in my opinion, is not a SEAL mission.
Right.
Doing a combat swimmer attack is a SEAL mission, right? But
we got our asses kicked for that.
yeah. So we actually originally were going to augment Team 4 and go to the airfield, and they were going to do the dive op until cooler heads prevailed, and this is where leadership comes in. Carly went over and talked to McGrath, who's the CEO of Team 4, and was like, dude, we do combat swimmer. You guys do jungle and land warfare. That's your bailiwick. Let us do the combat swimmer. And what that did was separate us from Team 4, which I thought was great, because our TTP, or at least our hand signals, weren't even the same. So how can you operate together? You can't. Now it's all kind of standardized, but back then it wasn't. So that's why we ended up practicing so much for the dive op. And that decision, I didn't know that decision hadn't been made until really late. Carly was just banking on that decision actually coming to fruition. So anyway, we get a call, and we didn't realize all the stuff that had happened down there with Adam Curtis and all that stuff. And anyway, President Bush signed the op plan, and it was like, go. We were still down in Florida. We couldn't get a flight out of Florida, so I think we rented a car, drove to like Atlanta, got on a plane, flew up to the team area, and what we didn't realize is we've been down there for 4 days. When the rest of the platoon had gotten up there, Carly put him in isolation and told the team that we had screwed up so bad on this exercise that he was considering disbanding us and all this other stuff, because they're operational security, right? Which is something that most people don't practice. But Carly was serious about it. And it was like, you guys are going to stay in that room and you're not going to tell anybody what's going on. And you're not telling anybody you're going down there and what you're going down there to do. And you're going to let the rest of this team think you're a bunch of dirtbags. And they're going to treat you poorly, which is typical for team guys.
Oh, we can turn on quick. We can turn that notch on quick. Freaking, it's unbelievable how fast we can do that.
We get up there, the four of us that were still down in Florida, and they took us literally. They were like dudes with guns, and I'm talking about dudes with guns, a quarterdeck guy. And he walks us up in an isolation room. And he goes, have a nice day. And I'm just like, what? And they tell us the whole story, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So it was then that I told them exactly what we were going to do. They didn't know that we were going to do a dive out. They just had practiced X amount of time. So anyway, long story short, that's when I was like, okay, this is why we've been doing what we're doing. This is what's happening. We're getting off C-141, and that night we're getting in the water and we are diving on these boats. So the next morning we get everything ready. That night, 7 pallets of ammunition, log rockets, everything else show up with this 141. It's all of Team 4 on one side and Team 2, our 16 dudes.
Y'all can see across and see all that, right?
What's that?
The airfield.
Yeah, once we got down there.
Yeah.
So we get on the plane with those guys, and my guys, all they did was jam their mags, because we had already trained for war. I made sure my guys, whenever we did anything, if they were going to carry, I made them go out and get dummy grenades. When we first started land warfare, I made them go out and we're gonna get smokes and we're gonna pull the fuses out, but we're gonna get smokes and you're gonna wear them if you're supposed to be carrying smokes. We're gonna get dummy, 40 mic rounds, and everybody's carrying a box of 60 ammo. And we just had this. So no matter what, when you went to war, and so I learned a lesson from some other guys who had gone and done some stuff and they weren't ready and they never trained with the full combat load, and so their buoyancy was off, and when they jumped out of the plane they drowned.
Oh my gosh.
Because they were too heavy. And they sank, right? So one of the first things I did was, when we were in land warfare back in June-ish, May, June, was get all your stuff on, here's what you're going to wear, jump in the water. And we were low tide over where SDBs always put in when they're in the creek. And there's sort of 5 feet of water, but it's like you need to be neutrally buoyant. So you can go down if you need to, it takes very little effort to stay on the surface. And we had closed cell phone. We were running H gear. We weren't running cool chicken plates and, carriers and all this other stuff they have now. And I don't even know the lingo anymore, but we were just running old H gear. But everybody had the right buoyancy without their life jacket inflated. You can't use your life jacket as a buoyancy compensator, because if you need to stay on the surface and you're neutrally buoyant with your life jacket inflated, then it's not saving your life, right? Especially if you can't move and keep yourself on the surface. So it was all, hey, if we're going to be anywhere near the water, we're wearing a life jacket, but your gear has to be good to go, and you have to wear everything that you're going to wear. So we trained the whole time.
You can't believe how deadly that is right there.
Everything.
Them 4 dudes coming out of the water?
Yeah.
How much training goes into that? What that is. Because I'm not that anymore. I mean, you can't just to hold that, to do that much training, to put all that attention to detail for the one thing.
Which is the way it should be, right?
That's what we do.
So we get on the plane and we're sitting on one side, and our guys just stuffed their mags with bullets, but there were guys on the other side that were lined up on that wall that were putting together H gear. How can you succeed in combat when you don't even have your H gear set up? You don't even have your combat load set up, So their leadership was poor. Our leadership, Norm Carley, Ed, Lieutenant Simpkins, our leadership was good in that we trained for war. We trained from day one, running around with a full combat load. When we dove, we didn't dive with all this extra junk. It was as streamlined as we could get, and that was it. We carried a pistol. and we carried a 686 Chrome
Chrome.
Smith & Wesson Python, and everybody's like, you guys are dumb. And it's like, okay, well, have you ever tried? So your buddy, you're diving, and your buddy goes belly up. Oxygen toxicity, whatever. And he stops, and you got to get him to the surface. So you get his life jacket going, and now you're on the surface, and you're trying to hold him up, and maybe trying to do CPR or whatever, and a boat comes up. If you got your SIG or Beretta or something that's a regular magazine-fed pistol, what happens if it doesn't fire? You got to jack the slide back. What happens if a Colt Python don't fire? You just pull the trigger again because a new round's coming in,
Like
the,
a revolver?
in the cylinder.
Yeah, we carry revolvers out of the water because all you have to do is squeeze the trigger.
And the great thing for that was, especially on the Smith & Wesson, man, is we just take it, we had Packmeyer grips or whatever, and we just pull them off, throw them in diesel fluid, and, pick them up the next dive, clean them up, spray them off, put the grips back on, and go dive, and they never rusted. It was awesome. But we needed a weapon. Didn't carry a...
So a revolver, I'm sure these are specialized because a regular revolver wouldn't fire in the water, would it?
Why not? I'm not talking about it firing underwater. I'm talking about if you're on the surface and a boat were to come up and they're trying to pull you into the boat, the bad guys.
Okay.
You could at least, as the guy with your buddy, you could at least shoot that guy and then try to get away.
Yeah.
But you're really vulnerable as a combat swimmer.
You can work that revolver with one hand.
You need to be underwater. And that was the thing, right? I still have to hold my buddy and shoot. And I can't do that if I'm using a SIG or some other gun, because if it doesn't go off, then...
That was the biggest thing, is the revolvers under the
But we had so many guys telling us that
school.
what are you diving weapons for in the first place, number one? And number two, why are you diving one of those things, But it was... We had thought about it. We had thought through it all. So anyway, we got down there, and it was, 8-ish in the morning when we got into Rodman. And I can remember Joe Lacaze was a CMC down there, and Joe was like, Randy, I know you're not chief, but you're the platoon, senior enlisted. He goes, I'm going to treat you that way while you're here. Just don't screw me. In other words, your guys go here. Don't mess none of this up. We just were under that big awning down there at the unit and had all our gear laid out. That was the best we had. We didn't have a place to put our heads other than in the dirt, But for us, it was like, no problem. So what was next, right? It was put the dive rigs together, right? Now, 10:30 in the morning, there we are, me and Chris, and we sucked them down, and the bag held, and we knew the O-rings were good. And I'll divulge a secret. You're supposed to inflate the bag and squeeze and make sure that under positive pressure it doesn't leak, but we did. We had dove that stupid thing 70 times, so we're like, it sucks down, it's good.
Did you try to do...
And me and him dove
too
rigs.
perfect with that rig, it'll kill you.
Well, I'm just saying our confidence was really high.
I get it. No, I'm fine.
And in retrospect, both he and I were like, well, that was stupid. And he was right. But we got away with it. So got all the rigs ready, and then we started looking, and there's only one boat across the way. It's supposed to be 8. What we didn't know is the night before, 7 boats went up through the canal to Cologne, and they pulled them out of the water. I wonder why that was.
So somebody dime y'all?
Yeah, I think so. Right? I think so, 100%.
Sounds like somebody dimed y'all.
I mean, I'm saying us. I'm talking about us and the other 13,000 dudes that showed up for this. It was all special ops. It was a SOCOM event. No conventional troops.
Someone took y'all's boat?
No. The patrol boats that we were supposed to sink across the canal. So we're on the south side of the canal, in the south side by the Bridge of America. We're on the south side of the canal on Rodman Naval Facility, which is where the Unit 8 was. And on the north side of the canal, so a mile and a half away, maybe a mile away, that's where the patrol boats were. That's where Noriega's boats were. There was 8. But the morning we showed up, there was only 1. Like the day before, there was 8. This morning there was 1. So then, so you got 8 dive pairs, all totally
ready to go,
capable,
all ready to go. Ready to go.
So who do you
pick?
You get 1 boat, and then it's like, who do you pick? Right? So Team 2 hadn't been in combat since Vietnam. And you got me and Ed Coughlin. He's the OIC, and I'm the senior enlisted. And I remember he and I, we were over in some room in the unit, and he's just like, what do we do? And I go, Ed, I really don't care what you are going to do, but I know I'm going. Because I am not sitting over here twiddling my thumbs with two of my dudes trying to conduct a dive op. I go, I don't view myself as that kind of a leader. I'm not a general, right? I'm not a strategic guy. I'm a platoon dude who's supposed to be operating and destroying the enemy's infrastructure. So I'm going. And he's like, well, I'm going. Decision made. It wasn't because we had 6 other dive pairs that couldn't do it. It was because we had me and him, and we weren't going to not do it. We were the ones. So if a decision had to be made that changed the event and changed the outcome of the event, it was on us. So we had to be there. You can't armchair quarterback something like this. You know, you got to be there. So that's why he and I dove. Chris Dye was my dive buddy. TK Upley was his dive buddy. So of course they dove. We didn't go pick the next 2 senior dudes and say, hey, yeah, because you guys are the next 2 senior guys. No, it's dive pair integrity, right? Chris and I dove all those dives together, so we knew exactly what we were going to do, and that comes into play. With,
Who was the pilot, you or him?
Me. The first, that was because of that last comment, was if something screws up, I'm not turning around and blaming an E5 as an E6.
Is that what Chris was?
So I drove, and if something happens, it's my fault, right? If we didn't get there, it's my fault.
Yeah.
If we got compromised, it's my fault, not his fault. And I'm not going to sit there in the rear with the gear when they're, you know, chastising us, or God forbid he's dead and I'm not, going, oh, it's his fault. So that onus is on me, right? So I need to be the guy that's making that decision. So TK now drove the other pair, but TK was a savant when it came to driving a compass board, man. TK could.
It was good, huh?
That boy was good, like super good. And Ed was super bad. So Ed was like, yeah, he's going to drive. But Ed would still make the decision. So I chose to drive, not, you know, Chris was totally capable, so it wouldn't have mattered. But anyway, long story short.
Did y'all swap off, or were you always driving?
I always drove.
Yeah.
What are you driving?
Oh, the compass board.
It's,
so it's just back then. Now they have these nice boards, but we had a little wooden board just with a Benz compass. It was a French-made compass full of kerosene or something, and glowed in the dark. And you had a watch and a depth gauge.
Just it's called an attack
You're
board.
not driving anything. You're
So
holding something.
You're holding something.
We call it driving.
That's right.
Yes, you're holding an attack board. You're following
You're
it.
not actually driving
Well,
like a
what do you do
boat
when you
or
drive
something.
down a road? You follow the lines in the road.
Technically, I mean, because you can move it like a steering wheel, I guess.
You're driving the bearing
Well,
on
on
the compass
James
board.
Bond, 1965,
Yes.
they had these
Thunderball. That was Thunderball.
They had these little underwater jet skis.
Scooters,
they were
yeah.
driving.
That's good.
That's
So
cool.
that's not
But what
what
happens when the battery runs out?
But that's not what you're driving.
No,
because
You have a wooden board
and you're kicking.
with a compass.
because
and you're
all that
like-
stuff makes bubbles.
Yeah.
All that stuff makes bubbles. The stuff that we use doesn't. We can sneak up on a fish and tap them on. We've done that.
So it takes a lot. Now, Aaron Griffin and Chuck Williams, man, would beat us on the head. If you let any little bubble come out of your mask, that's bad. Especially, so you're on the target and a bubble comes out. Somebody standing up there goes, hey, there's a bubble. It's either a turtle or it's somebody trying to sink my boat, so I'm going to drop a grenade. But, you know, they drove that into us, and we trained that way, man. We trained to clear our mask without leaving any bubbles, and you don't ever want a bubble to leave.
How do you clear your mask without leaving a bubble?
I'm not telling you. It's a secret.
Oh, okay. I respect that.
Stick your finger up in there.
Get it? Do one of these, right?
Water comes down. Right when it gets there, you let your finger out.
You can't believe there's a method for it.
There is a method.
There is a method.
So the day goes on. Lindsay was getting, I guess, nervous. And so he was like, we need to delay the divers from getting in the water. Because you got to remember, once we go in the water, it's over. That boat is blowing up. Because they can't call you back. It's not like you have an underwater microphone going, hey, dudes, yeah, the op's canceled. It's not happening. So he delayed us a half an hour. We had enough time built into the plan to make that work, but it was going to be close. So we used...
You're talking about tidal shift, right?
What's that?
The tidal shift?
Well, I'm just talking about just the timing period to get to the target from where we were getting in the water.
Yeah.
You know, losing a half an hour is losing 1,000 yards.
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
So it wasn't good, but we had enough time, but we knew we were going to be close, and so it's kind of like, what do we do? So we didn't have a limpet mine because it was an aluminum hulled boat. A limpet mine's magnetic. And we couldn't use the stud drivers. They have a little tab, and you could stud drive it in there, but tungsten little thing. But if it's cold iron, it's not a big boat. It's only 70-ish feet long. The people on the boat would hear that, so you can't do that. So I'm like, I think we're going to just take the limpet backpack. We're going to take a haversack, which has got 20 pounds of C4. A limpet has what, 3-ish, 2-ish, not a lot. And we're going to slap it on there, and then we're going to pull 2 socks out, and that's where we're going to put the clock and the safe and arming device, and then the bit of explosive, the safe and armor, or the det has to go in. We'll slip it down in there, and that's going to be our bomb. And that's what that was in the plan from day one. And it was just because the ordnance people had given me these experimental digital clocks. Experimental digital clock, you could arm it, and it had an internal 30-minute safe and arming device. In other words, if you armed it at 30 minutes before the target was supposed to go off and 1 second, you were good. If you armed it at 29 minutes and 59 seconds, it was not going to go off because there's an internal safety mechanism that, you know, if you arm it inside of 30 minutes, it won't go off. So it gives you time to get away. But our Mark 39 safe and arming device had a 15-minute. It was a mechanical clock. When you arm that, it would not let the explosive train align so the signal could get from the source to the cap for 15 minutes so you could get away. So we had a 15
math underwater.
We had a 15-minute window.
That
wouldn't have made it.
So
It is weird.
Hard.
So I told Chris, and Chris,
That's Navy. That's Navy right there.
Chris is like, what are we going to do? And I go, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to arm that stupid clock, the big one, the one with the 30-minute. We're going to arm that at like 35. And then as long as we can make it to the target and with more than 15 minutes to spare, then we'll arm the Mark 39 and
So
jet.
wait a minute, you were swimming with an armed, with it was already ticking?
That was the contingency plan.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Right?
Because that changes everything. If you're rolling down, if you're kicking out with a
No. That was just a contingency plan.
all right.
So,
dude, that was a bit
I will
much, man.
spare you all the politics of us getting in the water, but in order for us to get in the water and dive on the dive, we had to be on the other side of the canal. Because at full ebb, and with the Miraflores locks open, it could be up to 7 knots of current.
That's what I'm talking about.
Going down
It's
the canal.
huge. 30 minutes, an hour. That's huge.
So you can't dive across and expect to make this work. So we had to get in Zodiacs and motor across and get on that side. So there's a mangrove kind of, let's call it northwest of where the target area was, and we got in our boats and went on bag right before we got in the boats, and so we could breathe them down and make sure everything's going to function. And in that time that it took us to get over there,
How long was that?
10 minutes maybe.
this is right by like the
Oh yeah, we're probably 1,000 yards away from the bad guys.
But is this right by the canal in Panama
This is
City?
the Panama Canal near Panama City.
So like where they have the bleachers? Have you been down there since?
No,
I've
since
been
he
there
blew it up.
once.
I don't think I should go down there.
No.
Anyway, but yes,
I've been there.
It's this side of the Bridge of America, but this side of Miraflores locks. So we got over the other side right at the right time, and they let TK and Ed out because Carly was in their boat. They let TK and Ed out. Our motor wouldn't idle right. So while we were going across, we needed more than an idle, but when we got across, we didn't want anybody revving the motor because the bad guys would hear the sound.
But you got to make it run because it kept farting.
Because
right?
it wouldn't
Yeah.
idle.
Yeah.
So even though I said,
I bet that was chirping you because you're a motor guy.
yeah, but when we ended up, they let them in, and then they came back and got us and dragged us out just outside the mangrove and put us in the water. But we were only in like 5 feet of water because the mangrove, it didn't drop down towards the piers and stuff until 100 yards out. So we're like 5 feet of water. And we're all ready to go. So Chris and I just looked at each other, and he's like, I'm like, and we just started diving. And we weren't like 1 minute into this stupid dive, and we hit an underwater tree. Some tree had fallen or something. So we hit, and it's like, and I'm just like, okay, don't panic. Not panic because I'm afraid, but panic because how do I get through this?
Yeah.
And I feel the buddy line, because I think Chris was on my right. I feel the buddy line getting wrapped up. He grabbed my wrist, got on my back, grabbed my other wrist, and was like, okay. You could kind of talk, kick down through that thing, got out the other side. He unwrapped it, got next to me, and we went, but we had to go deep. I went down to 25 feet, which we could back then. Now it's 19.9 or something. But I like diving deep because my buoyancy was easier to control. But number two, the water was super bioluminescent.
Oh, really?
So the little creatures are like fireflies, and there's billions of them. And so it's like you're like a big glow in the dark tube in the water, and I didn't want them.
It literally looks like the Northern Lights every time
Yeah.
you kick your fin, man.
I
It's
didn't
big,
want
huge.
anybody up there to be able to see us. So I'm diving at 25 feet, and I remember having to put my hand in front of my compass so I could just see the bearing.
All right, so you're confident in the office, at the dinner table, and even on the dance floor. But can you keep it going when you get back to the bedroom? With HIMS, you can get access to medication to ensure that you are always treated, so you can keep that confidence going all day and all night. HIMS has changed the game by offering affordable, easy, and discreet access to treatments. No more awkward doctor's visits, no judgment, just simple online solutions to a pretty common issue. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/TNQ. That's HIMS.com/TNQ for your personalized ED treatment options. That's hims.com/TNQ. Prescriptions require an online consultation with the healthcare provider who will determine if you're appropriate. Restrictions apply, and see website for details and important safety information. Subscription is required, and price varies based on product and subscription plan.
And it wasn't a really long shot. It was maybe a 500-yard shot to get to the pier that we had to go around to get on the other side to where the boat was. So was it a long dive to get there? No, but it's just part of the deal, right? So I literally, because I had to put us in the water in a different place than we had planned. I would have a different bearing, so I had to take a bearing, and I just dove that bearing. Ended up hitting the pier right where I needed to.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and then we ended up staying just inside the first set of
Did you come up at the bottom of it?
Were you scared shitless counting your kicks?
No, see, that's the thing, right? So I try to tell people, like when we teach the college kids and everything else, and it's like, you need to make your training so hard that when you do the live
anticlimactic.
hop or the play the game or whatever, it's easier than training was. And so for us, the dives that we had done, and we would have other team guys try to find us on those dives, like the training dives. It'd be like, and as many team guys as we could get to try to find us. That added a level. You don't want a team guy to find you at a combat swim attack.
They'll jack you up worse than the enemy.
You know, and so it's like, it's bragging rights, right? The next day, what's going to happen to the team? They suck, you know, and that's worse than
freaking dropped ARDs on, dude. You can't.
That's worse than getting killed by the bad guy.
So is Ed next to you the whole time?
Chris and Ed is 5 minutes ahead of us.
Okay.
So he and TK, when they hit the pier, they decided to stay on the outside of the pier and free dive it, you know, with bearings. With me, I'm kind of like, I'm worried about my compass spinning. So this is a 700-yard long pier, and had a cement like triangle thing right in the middle, so you couldn't just swim through the piers. You had to kind of go around. We just stayed inside the piling, so I kind of pier swam, and we were kind of over under.
Did you see?
Maybe 10 feet.
Check.
So kind of diving, and then we had to go 700. Instead of taking 21 minutes, that took like 30 minutes because you're not diving your normal pace, you know. So now we had this 500 yards and this. So I'm looking at the time, and I'm like, man, we need to get there. But got down to the far end of that pier, which is deep inside the pier system where the boats were. And I get to the rudder of a freighter that was sitting there because I could just see it off to my right because it was super bright lights. And the super bright lights were coming from where the targets were. They had a big notch about 400 feet wide, and they had two big cement floating piers that you could drive a 6x down on. They had these bladders underneath. It was huge. Maybe 60, 75 feet deep, and then 400 feet long, and it was two of them, so 200 feet apiece. And that's where all the boats, the pilot boats that would go in and out to bring the ships, they would all be there. But they were all little wooden hulled, you know, little single screw things that, you know, it looks like a play toy. But But that's where all that activity was, and it was lit up. There was 4 rows of 4 fluorescent lights, 400 feet long. It was like daylight. So we're underneath this pier. Compass board's in here. I'm not even using it. And I get to the end, and I can see the rudder of this, it's a little freighter, not a big one. I see the rudder, and I'm just like, what is all that light? So I kind of brought myself up and just kind of used refraction, and I'm like, wow, that's the target area, and it's that bright. Now we're running out of time, and I'm like, how do I do this? So what I could have done was just go down all the way in the dark and gone underneath the floating pier. But I'm like, man, I need to cut some corners here. So I had Chris stay a little deeper. I literally got on that rudder and did like a 45 and just free swam it, maybe 6-8 feet down so I could kind of see. And then we got underneath that floating pier and started to go down towards the target. And you could see little shadows. And every time I saw a shadow, I'd go over, see if it's a pilot boat or the target. Because the target I hadn't seen yet, So after about the 3rd pilot boat, I'm like, where is this thing, man? Because it was there when we got in the water. So where is it? And so used refraction again, and I could actually see it. And I'm like, oh, man, it's like 50 yards down. So go back underneath the floating pier, and right then, something was going on. It sounded like somebody was dropping a 55-gallon drum full of gas on that floating pier. Like, boom, like a really loud boom. And there was, I'll say 3 or 4 of them. And I had no clue what was going on.
Was that what it was?
What happened was I think a 7th group got in a firefight with somebody, and that was either 40 Mike or that was them hucking grenades.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that because
Right.
the airfield and everything had kicked off too, right?
Yeah, so HR was 1 a.m, and they were going to back it up to 12:45 instead of 1. But our charges weren't going off till 1. So it's about 12:30ish time frame. So we're in that period where, man, we need to be arming that 1 clock, the main clock. And I think we had like 5 minutes to spare. But I was listening to that, and I didn't know what that was, but TK and Ed were closer, I think, at that time than we were. And I think maybe 1 or 2 had gone in the water. And so they had felt it, but I didn't. I had been far enough away, I think, that I didn't feel anything. So it was either 40 Mike or just a hand grenade, not a concussion grenade. I don't think the bad guys thought or knew we were coming.
Yeah.
But so we kept going, and we ended up getting the target first. So how that happened, I don't know.
We don't even know now?
But we got to the target first by 1 minute. Because Chris and we got there, and I remember there's a big shadow. So I got over, and I'm like, that's probably it. But you always identify it, right? What do you do?
Tactical peak.
Tactical peak, right? So instead of breaking the surface, I wanted to look for the hull number, P202.
Was that what it was? 202?
Yeah. And I'm just like, so I put one hand under the boat, one hand under the pier, and I kind of let myself up, and I wanted to make sure I didn't lose my buoyancy and surface. And there was a dude on the back of those Swift boats that had a little ladder and a step, like a step stool or whatever. And there was a dude with 1 foot on that and 1 foot on the pier.
On the pier and on the boat.
And I'm looking up at his crotch.
Straight between his legs, freaking blow his ass off. Can you imagine that dude? I mean, it's like looking down at Great White down there, right? And I'm not having any freaking clue that you... That was my favorite part of the story.
So I remember seeing that, and I'm like, I go back down, and I look at Chris, and I'm like, that's the right thing. And I'm in my head, I'm like, man, you got 30 minutes to live, dude. But Chris didn't waste any time, man. He had the charge on his back, went right under, grabbed the shaft. That was our plan. And we
Is that what y'all just hung it?
unclipped the straps from the backpack, and we clipped it in front of the strut. So in case they started moving, it would at least hang on until those straps broke and wouldn't get caught up in the screw. So he armed everything. We were, like I said, we had 5 minutes to spare. He armed the big clock, armed the safe and arming, and then I checked it, and we were gone. Back under the pier, and down we went. But there was no charge on the other side. So after I'm sitting there thinking, I wonder if those booms and stuff were them getting compromised, So I'm like, we need to get out of here just in case they had gotten compromised, and they're looking for divers. So that was the other thing, is I was supposed to get to the end and just dive straight out 1,100 yards, because that's how long that other pier was. And I'm like, I'm not doing that now. I'm going to stay under this pier, which was challenging because every 100 yards it had a cement wall we had to go around.
So if
Such a pain.
you and Chris got there first, did Ed get there while you were there?
No. We never saw them. This whole dive, we never saw them.
There was a drop dead time too, right?
Yeah, so if we had gotten in the water on time, we would have planted the charges, and we would have made it down to the end of that 1,100-yard pier. And at the end of that pier, there's a dolphin, which is nothing but a bunch of pilings that you could actually get in down deep and go up and do a peek inside of it, because by the surface, all them logs, telephone poles are really close together. So unless someone's looking in there, they're not going to see you. But we had taken I want to say it wasn't an emitter. Maybe it wasn't an emitter. But we had taken a radio in a bag, which we were having problems with those bags leaking. And of course, you know, my radio was soaked with water anyway, but we were supposed to be there well before H hour, and we were going to call Carly and say, hey, charges are on the boat. But now we're way behind time. So we made it maybe 2 or 3 of those 100-yard pieces when the time was coming, 5 till midnight. I look at Chris and I'm like, so we went way back underneath the pier, and underneath the pier there was a cement, piece of cement and had a perfect ledge, and we sat on that ledge and we went off bag and got out of the water torso wise, because we're 300 yards away from 40 pounds of demo, and we didn't know if there's going to be any other explosions going off, so we're worried about our chest cavities kind of getting crushed. But we didn't, we had no experience at that point. So was that the right decision? I don't know. TK and Ed did the same thing. So
they did?
It was the right decision in my book.
So where were they? Do you know?
They were literally like a minute behind us. They were 30, 40 yards behind us all the time.
Did they even come up and plant?
What's that?
Did they even make it to the boat?
Literally, we went under and started going that way, and they must have just gotten there like a minute later.
He's like, I saw your charge, man.
When we looked at the time, when we did the time at the end of the dive, like, what time did you get there? What time I get? It was a minute apart.
See, I bet that would, if I was the first dive pair and I showed up and there was already a bomb on the boat, that's pretty intimidating. That's some pucker factor if you were supposed to be the first ones to plant.
Well, plus all the stuff that was going off, maybe they thought we got compromised.
You got compromised.
So
on the way out.
Which is what they thought. They're like, what's going on? But they were closer to that stuff than we were. But long story short is we ended up going all the way down. And I remember there was these 2 huge, in the corner where those 2 sections came together, there was 2 huge, like 10-foot diameter pilings that held up that corner. And we were way down in behind them, and I looked at Chris and I'm like, hey, let's go check out, see what's happening. Bad decision, right? So we start, it's just like in the movies, where you can't hear anything, and then all of a sudden you're out of the water and you can hear everything. And it was like, man, everything was going off, like everything, because we didn't know H hour had got moved up 15 minutes. So everything is going off. Commandancy is getting pounded by the AC-130, and it sounded like everything breaking loose. And Chris and I, both our eyes were like this, man. We looked at each other and like,
yeah, I bet that's freaking.
We went back down, until 5 minutes before the hour, got out of the water, and there was so much going on, we never heard the shot. We were only 300 yards away.
So did the guy die?
We never heard. Well,
dude.
Yes. However,
so did you just come walking up off when you came out of the water?
Man, we'll get to that, but we didn't hear the shot. Like a water shot's really muffled, right?
Yeah.
I thought we'd feel it. There was so much going on and so many concussions going on. We couldn't tell if it went off, but it did. Right, exactly on time. It blew up, and that boat came out of the water and then settled back down. And 30 seconds later, it was gone. So.
And there were people on the boat.
12. So, word I got was that 6 lived, 6 died, but I don't know if that's true. So we get back on bag and we go down to the end of that pier, and I get up in the Dolphin and pull my radio out to call them and say, hey, you already know that either it was successful or it wasn't. This whole time in my head I'm thinking, great, first combat swimmer attack SEALs have ever done, and it didn't work because of experimental clock. I was going to blame it on that and all sorts of other stuff, but
you already had it worked up?
I didn't. Well, no, that's the thoughts that go through your head, right? The clock must not have worked, So I go up to call him. Water's in the radio, so I go back down, and I'm like, all right, let's go. From there, we were supposed to dive out 12 minutes, over 12 minutes, and back 12 minutes. So 12 divided by 3 is 4, so it's 400 yards out, 400 over, and 400 back in to get around the dry dock area, because it was just a mess in the images. But we didn't know that they had opened the locks, and it was full ebb. And so that current kind of comes in where all the piers and everything were, and it shoots out. So our 400 yards that we dove, 12 minutes, we ended up going 900 yards, almost to Rodman. We were right in the middle of the canal, like right in the middle of where the ships would go. And there was some dude who was in a freighter that was making a beeline to get out. So he was up towards Miraflores, and he wanted to get out. And he was hauling the mail. So we're diving, we make our left turn, we're diving, and I start hearing, engine noise behind us. And in my head, I'm like, okay, how deep's a freighter, And I'm like, I remember seeing some pictures. I know an aircraft carrier is like 48 feet or 50 feet deep. I mean, they're deep. I go, a freighter can't be that deep. And our excursion is 5 minutes at 50 feet.
50 feet.
Right? You're allowed 5 minutes at 50 feet. So I'm like, I guess I need to think about doing an excursion, right? So I'm again diving at 25 feet, and I start going deeper, and Chris kept pulling me back up. And then I'd be like, going deeper, and he'd pull me back up. But that noise is getting louder behind us, And like the third time, man, I stopped, and I literally got straight up and down, and I tapped on his ear, and he's like, oh, that's what he said. We're like, oh. And we both straight down to 50 feet. We weren't there for more than 30 seconds, man, and it was dark, but it got really dark, like super dark. Because that freighter is now over the top of us. And what you got to worry about on the freighter is not the first 2/3, it's the last 2/3 where all the main circ pumps are that suck up the water to cool the engines and all that stuff. And so I'm like, how big are those holes, I mean, they're big enough to suck you in and chop you up. So we're at 50 feet, and I'm like, do I go deeper? And I didn't want to go deeper because I'm like, well, it's not touching me now. I can't feel it rubbing on me, so I think we're okay. And I do believe that if we're 5 feet away, we wouldn't get sucked up because this thing's moving, right? If it was stationary, maybe. But so we're going, and we're diving, this thing, and then it got super loud. And right then, on the dragger for the mouthpiece, there's a head strap. What do most guys do?
They don't put it on.
Throw that away, right? They take it off. They don't dive with it ever. Because normal dive, teeth holds the mouthpiece in, and you don't need it. But it's there for this exact reason, because when you're under a ship and the main circ pumps are running, the vibrations are so bad your teeth can't grip hard enough to keep that mouthpiece in your mouth. So you got to zip that, mount that, strap in there to keep the mouthpiece in. And I was just getting ready to tell Chris, I was going to grab his, and so I grabbed mine and zip, and right then I hear zip, zip. And both had the same thought at the exact same time, and then you could hear it. It was so loud, and that thing went, and I knew it had passed us.
What did it sound like?
When
it's
just huge vibration. I mean, it's
engine noise, but muffled. It's kind of
just no way of explaining it otherwise.
Yeah, it's just
like when you watch the movie Titanic, does it sound like that going?
I've never heard it on
down?
I've never heard it on TV before.
I don't know, man. You can't describe this. It's like deafening loud.
It's its own little,
and it's super vibration
noise.
But I knew that when we did this number, we swayed back and forth. I knew the screw had gone over
top of you.
And so now it's like, okay, I'm out 900 yards out. I'm 500 yards past where I should be. I'm probably almost in Rodman. And I thought in my head, man, should I just surface and go to Rodman, or should I go to my extract? But I decided not to go to Rodman because as soon as it got nightfall, about every 20 yards, they put 2 Marines, young guys, along the fence. And they were just like, I'm thinking to myself, 2 divers coming out of the water, all darked up, young kids, they'll probably shoot and then ask questions later. So I'll just go to my extract. But I knew that I was so far out, and I'm like, I made the decision at that point. I'm like, I'm going to surface and take a bearing on the extract point, and then I'm just going to go and dive as hard as I can to get there. And when you're that deep and you're trying to surface quickly, that bag fills up. Once that bag fills up, the air's going to come out the mouthpiece, but I'm in the wake of this thing, so I'm like, I don't care. So we were like 2 Poseidon missiles, man. I probably came out of the water in my belly. And then let the bag kind of, let that all flow out before I came back in the water, and then turned around, took a bearing, and we went back down 25 feet and started diving.
How far out were you?
900 yards.
Still 900?
It took us like 29 minutes to get back to the pier.
Oh my gosh.
Most people don't understand what we're talking
Give it
about.
12.
In that rig, there's a bag. Imagine a hot water bottle.
A breathing bag.
If you knew what that, if you had one of those back in the day.
Whoopee cushion.
Something like that. It looks like that.
So when you exhale, that has to go through the Sodazorb scrubber and then into that bag. Because when you exhale, your lungs get smaller. The volume is a little smaller because some of the oxygen CO2 gets scrubbed out, but the rest of it has to go somewhere, and that kind of actually compensates for your loss of buoyancy. It's more buoyant, so you stay neutral.
It's like having an exterior lung.
Yeah.
Just kind of.
So when you get back, are they like, dude, you did it?
Yeah, so I'll get to that. So we end up getting to where the end of the pier system was, and we were actually supposed to extract a little farther out. But I'm like, we're far enough out. I think it's time for me to surface and just see if I see Zodiacs sitting out in the open where they should be. And I was going to get in the dolphin that was there, but I didn't. And I'm just surfacing, and I see a outboard motor. And so I go back down real quick, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. It's probably our dudes. So I go back up, and sure enough, I see the H on the, whatever it is, the drive shaft portion of the motor. I see the H on there. It's our boats. And they're kind of half under the pier, tucked in there. And so I had to grab Chris, pull him up.
You swam right in?
I swam right to the boat. They didn't want to sit out there in the middle of the out in the open by these big circular pilings. So they stayed under there because there were still bad guys up on top. So anyway, here we are. So I surface, Chris surfaces, big Mark Dodd, is sitting up on the tube. And I had to splash him because there's a lot still going on. And those guys are all locked and ready to go. And he turns around and he goes, there they are. And he grabbed Chris by the back strap of the second arm and yanked him right out of the water. Like Mark Dodd's strong, like twice as strong as I am. He yanked Chris right out of the water. And then I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to have to help a little bit. Nope. He grabbed me, man, and whoosh, like a fish, threw me in a boat, and we took off and started heading over to Rodman. And one of the SBU boats came up next to us. They did a little bona fides, and we kept on going. And that was the end of the dive. But, it took us a second to get off bag and everything else. And everybody's like, hey, man, good job. And I'm like, it worked. And they're like, yeah, it worked. And I'm like, oh, wow.
Damn right. Damn right, dude.
So we had never done a combat swimmer attack up to that point. When I say we, Naval Special Warfare, haven't done one since. I've not blown anything else up since.
That's crazy.
Weird. Day later, though, we did send all the dudes that hadn't really dove on that dive op or supported that dive op up north to Cologne because they said there was maybe some boats in the water and they were going to dive on them because we had other ops that we had to do. So we kept half the platoon on the south side, sent the other half to the north side, and they didn't have to dive or anything, but they actually flew up there on Blackhawks or Hueys to get up to the north side, and they spent like a week and a half up there.
When did word come on that our guys got hurt?
So as soon as we got out at the SBU pier, we're getting out of the boats, and we run up. I'm sitting on my cot, and there's 3 guys, shadows I could see. I didn't really know they were there until I'm taking my rubber off and everything, and one was Rich Hansen, and he's like, hey, Randy, good job. And I'm like, what are you doing here? Like, this is like one of the most experienced dudes at Team 4. Well, guess who else was there? Tommy Keith. And he's like, what are you doing here? And I think Rick Schneider was the other one. I might have that wrong, but there's 3 of their most experienced guys, and they left him behind because they disagreed with the way the op was planned. So...
Is that when you found all this out when you got back?
Yeah, and then... anyway, right after that, then that's when Commodore Sandos comes running in, and he's like, there's been a firefight, Patia. There's 4 dead, 9 wounded. And he's like, get your platoon ready, you're going. So I'm like, okay. So we lifted and shifted, got our H gear on, went out to the baseball field to get on a helo and head to Patia, and we're just ready to go, right? Everything's ready. So we just went from combat swimmer kit to land warfare kit and went out there. But then Marty Strong's platoon was there, and they went out, which made sense. They were actually deployed to Panama, and they had put them in isolation in Panama because they didn't want them letting it slip that this was all going to go on. If they had told them ahead of time, I can't say that was the right decision. I don't think it was, but whatever. But anyway, Marty and them went out and didn't come back for 3 days, man. They were out there for a long time. So, but for us, we had other follow-on ops and everything like that, but it didn't really matter. That op went off exactly like it was supposed to. We had to make a few little decisions here and there about what to do, but it was easier than the training dives that we did.
Do you, with all of the advancements in dive gear, do you think that what are the benefits of the new stuff and what's holding us back?
I don't think it's the equipment, right? I'm sure they're still diving a mod of LAR-5, but they're clipping it into body armor. From what I understand, I could be completely wrong, but when I was out there a year and a half ago, they were clipping their rigs into body armor. So what's the plan? Are you combat swimming, or are you gonna? So again, I'm not active duty, but if I was, Naval Special Warfare would maintain its capability to do the combat swimmer attack. And then maybe if we did, we'd do more of them when the need came. It's my belief that special forces are the scalpel, right? In other words, collateral damage is a huge problem. I personally can't say that, hey, this guy, we're going to get this one dude, but we're going to shoot a missile in there, drop a bomb in there, kill 30, let's just call them non-combatants, to get the one dude, why aren't you sending in him and his boys? Because that's what they signed up for. They signed up to train that hard, to go do that, and it's like, tell you what, I'm not going to go get them at the wedding. I'll get them going to the wedding. I'll get them coming back from the wedding, but we'll get them. And instead of this, let's shoot things from far away and kill,
that's what pisses everybody off when we do that.
Well, not only is it...
If you send us in to do it personally, for whatever reason, they don't get wrapped around the axle. But if you shoot them with a drone or from with a missile far off, man, that pisses everybody off.
Well, it pisses me off, right, to see that, because it's like, why do you have special forces then? Why do you have SEALs if you're not going to use them to do these hard ops? Will guys die? Yeah. But they signed up for that, right?
Says it in the brochure.
They put their name on that line. And we talk about it from the day the guy shows up at Bud's, and the right leadership says, hey, we're going to go, we're going to do this, we're going to have a plan, but we may not come back. All of us, none of us, whatever. There has to be that kind of mentality in your head, and you need to be okay with that.
Right.
That this could be the end of your life. And you need to be good with it. And you need to have your ducks in a row when it comes to your family and everybody else. But when you leave home, that could happen. And the guys that can't handle that should go. Mm-hmm. And the rest of them should stay.
We're banking on the fact that it shows up. Most team guys.
So if they are using body armor in dive gear now, was there ever an incident where someone was killed, or they just decided to add it?
That's what he's saying.
I don't know.
He doesn't know.
I don't know. I don't know, and I'm sure some team guy will listen to this and he'll come up with some great reason why it's good. And you know what? I'm irrelevant because I am not active duty. Right? I am no longer in charge of anything. I don't work at Warcom as a GS, and so I make zero decisions. All I have is my personal opinion on what should happen. But we have a lot of special forces between Army SF, Rangers, SEALs, Air Force. We have a lot of special forces. And as a guy that's running the show, you want to get somebody, and we, Naval Special Warfare specifically, has demonstrated our capability to go snatch somebody. And we should go do that. We shouldn't be shooting missiles into weddings. It's always a wedding, right? But we shouldn't risk that. Why don't we have dial yield weapons? Every weapon should be dial yield. So I got these dudes in a vehicle. I should be able to drop 125 pound, bomb, let's call it, but only have a 5 pound yield. Why don't I have that? Why aren't we spending our money on that? That would make sense to me, right? There could be a situation where you got a mortar position or a missile and it's shooting into a civilian community or whatever, and it's killing a lot of civilians, and that missile just happens to be around their civilians. So there may be a call there that has to be made that would justify it. But for the most part, SEALs and all the other special forces dudes, they sign up for that mission. They should be used for that specific purpose all the time. And the other stuff should be a desperate, backup. But that's my opinion. And we should test our guys. And, I think the risk-averse environment that we're in with all this, you got to have body armor, you got to have this, you got to have that. It makes sense for, let's say, urban warfare. Makes sense. For everything else, you're going to crawl through the jungles of South America with body armor on? That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. But our leadership is saying, no, we're going to do that because we don't want the people back there to think that we don't have the best interests of our soldiers and sailors in mind, when I think it's the opposite. And that's why I'm not popular, and I'll probably never be invited to talk on another one of these again, because I don't agree with the way they're doing things. I don't get it. A SEAL should be... I did a recon in Panama, and I took my CAR-15, 4 magazines, a grenade, and a life jacket and fins. That was it. And a red flashlight. And I'm not saying that I'm right, but guess what? It worked out perfect. And I was light, I could move, I could swim. I wasn't planning on getting in a firefight with my swim buddy and us, going against the whole Panamanian Defense Forces. It was...
Not really looking for a gunfight in the water.
No, so it was... We needed to find out what was there, and they had all these... Why don't you guys dress up in phone company uniforms and take a phone company truck and drive down there? I'm like, yeah. So we got me, Chris Kinney, and TK Epley. That was the thing. All over 6 feet, all white.
Because we don't look...
Nobody speaks,
exactly right.
Nobody speaks Spanish.
All right.
But we're going to get in their uniforms and go out there. It was for a specific purpose.
Well, like a
and I'm
pimple.
just looking at them. I'm like, how about this? In Buds, I learned how to do swimmer scout. I go, let me take Todd Peters, who was an unbelievable swimmer and an unbelievable shot with 40 mic as well as any gun that you ever could put in this dude's hand. And I'm like, let me take Todd and we'll swim in there and tell you everything that's out there. Swimmer scout. And Carly actually, he kicked me out of that meeting. He's like, shut up and get out. And then like 5 minutes later, he's like, all right, get your stuff on. You're going to go swim. And midnight that night, me and Todd are kick-stroking and gliding. So
that's a great op, man.
Anyway,
Yeah.
So sorry that took so long. But,
No, it's an awesome story.
I don't know. Like I said, I'm a bit different when it comes to what I think. But for me, it's all about the guys. It's up to... I can't let a guy go from a block of training knowing that I didn't train him as hard as I could possibly train him. And once you're through, in my opinion, once you're through Hell Week, we are no longer trying to attrite you, and we should not be trying to attrite you. There should be no course in naval special warfare that has a high dropout rate. And I'm talking about especially after you get your trident.
Well, they're there.
There should be none.
They're
Because
all like that.
What does that tell you, right? That tells you that some dude in his head was like, well, I'm going to make this so hard that nobody graduates because I'm in charge. And it's like, when I ran the JTAC Corps, I took it really personal if somebody failed. I mean, really personal. For me, it was just like, this should never happen. Every guy that comes up here should pass. And it's our job to work him as hard as we have to work him to make sure he gets through. Like you. That was the Pogonip year, all the fog. And your MASH chief was just like, dude, I need him qualled. And I'm like... I
stayed there.
And I'm like, just let him stay here and I'll get him qualled.
And I did.
And we did. But that was our job.
What about phase 2? A lot of guys drop out then, or fail, I guess.
You talking about in dive phase and Buzz?
Buzz?
Yeah.
Pool comp
it's-
is a big one, and it's I think it's 2 years. 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 Again, this is where the instructors don't need to make it harder than it already is. There's a list of things you do as an instructor. You start with this, whatever, pulling his mask off. Then you let him put it back on, clear it. Then you do this after X amount of laps or whatever. You have you just go up and down a line in a specific spot. Instructors don't need to make that harder than it is. So when you see a class that has, say, 35 guys in it, and 34 of them fail pool comp, that's a leadership issue, in my opinion. That is a failure of the leadership to instruct their instructors to do pool comp correctly and to gauge their performance based on the event itself and what the checklist is. So if 34 guys out of 35 fail pool comp, what's going on?
Right.
That would be my question as the guy that ran the phase. I'd be like, I'd literally look at him and go, what did you guys do, instructors? Why was this so hard? Because there certainly isn't 34 stupid people in this class.
Yeah.
Right? And
But
so
aren't
that's just
there
me.
some classes where they lose a lot of guys in pool comp?
Oh yeah, just naturally. That's what he's saying.
So there's a percentage, and I know because I was a buzz instructor, there's a percentage that are going to go. And it's really not that high. But you can't let a guy have chance after chance after chance either. Even if he's a great guy, you can't do that. So he has one shot, another shot, and that's it. Unless there's some weird thing that goes on. You may get a third, but that's rare. But all I'm saying is that I think the majority of classes are run exactly how they should be run. But when you have a class that has an abnormally high rate, like the class before me, had an abnormally high rate of rollbacks that failed pool comp. And it's just like...
We had this one instructor, he was such a good comper. Instructor Batman, he would sink to the bottom of the pool, and when he'd land like Batman, his hands on his hips like this, and he could jump off the thing and somersault in the water and then land beside you. And you always knew when someone had him, because one sleeve on your brown shirt would be gone. He had it to where he could rip the complete sleeve off of your shirt. That's how you knew you had him. You couldn't see anything. And he would beat the shit. I mean, those guys...
Pool comp's hard.
Oh, it's so hard.
It's super difficult.
It's terrifying.
Because you're trying to stay underwater.
Calm. You're trying to remain calm. Someone's kicking your ass underwater.
And they're
dude.
trying to do everything they can to force you to the surface.
I mean, it's terrifying.
And so you have to literally be like, I have enough breath. I can work this problem. And if I run out, there's a procedure. If you run out of breath that you have to follow, you go down, kiss the bottom, and then start blowing, and you go. But even that's hard.
Who comes up with this shit, man? Who even came up with that? That thing is awesome.
Smart, though.
Talk about just a freaking kick in the pants.
But the calmer you are, if a student is really calm, no matter what you do to him, grab that thing and put it in the back, and he calmly does his business. Are you just going to keep going and make it harder and harder and harder? Because if he passes the one super hard part of that, then what should you do? Hit the surface, dude. Go. You're done.
Dude, take the regulator hose and wrap it around your throat.
So
just kick
instructor staff has to be guided by the senior enlisted and the FASO.
Yeah, because SEALs want to kill those students. That's a natural phenomenon. I think the instructors, like natural SEAls,
whenever
they
my
want to kill the instructors
would get out of hand, and it happened, and I would I'd walk across the grinder and get their record. And then I'd bring them in, quiet time, and I'd sit them down with their record.
That's pretty hardcore.
And I'd be like...
From Budge, you mean?
Yep. I'd be like,
nice.
Here is your record.
That's hardcore.
Here's your performance when you were in Buds. Do we need to make this particular event harder on these guys? Or do you think you want to just let them do the event and pass or fail? Well, yeah, I guess I could do that. So it's all about, reality.
Freaking love our guys. That's so...
Buds does not need to be harder than it is. It's harder.
We got instructors who get in a fight with their girlfriend, come in, try to kill students just to freaking vent some frustration. And you can tell who they were.
Saturday.
Come on Saturdays. Come in Saturdays to beat your ass, dude.
And it's just like, I had one instructor that did that. And I had another instructor, FASO, come in and pointing fingers at me and everything. And we went toe to toe. And it's just like, you were right for doing what you were doing, but what you should have done was call me and I would take care of it. I'll take care of it now. And that instructor never got next to another student the rest of his time there. I couldn't get rid of him. Wasn't enough to pull his trident, but because it wasn't a SEAL-related performance issue, but I wouldn't let him ever deal with the students again. You know, which hurts the rest of our instructors because now we're in man down. You know, and we ended up having one more dude that we did that to, but he was bad news, and he ended up leaving Buds and got orders somewhere else. But you know, it's tough. But somebody has to, you know, like I said, man, Buds is hard enough.
Hey, we got some non-social guys.
I don't care if they're non-social.
We got everything under the sun in our
they're-
community, man.
As long you're supposed to be teaching the student,
Right. You're supposed to be
facilitating
creating a new generation.
It says instructor on your shirt, man.
Facilitating the actual events so that you can excel.
Yeah.
What happens when you hit 8:30 on the O course? You get to do the commando slide on the slide for
right.
life, right?
That's right.
Instead of going underneath. And so it's a big deal.
That's a real big deal.
And the instructors actually they make it a big deal. It's like, hey man, you were 8:29. Let's go. Let's climb up and get on commando.
I remember when I hit that. That was a big
Teach
deal.
you how to do commando slide, and they teach you how to do it. And it's cool because now you can save a good minute and a half.
And you look cool doing it too.
Plus, you're cool.
Hey, cool.
You know.
It's important.
But
So
did we have
important.
students fall off and break their legs? Yeah. But you got to let them
I-
fall off
hey.
and break their legs.
We had this one kid named Dunn. He fell off of it from the top before they put the net under it, hit the sand, stood up, was out of breath. He's like, you know, kind of walked off. And they were like, hey, you okay? He's like, yeah, I'll be all right. 10 students later, another kid fell off of it. Next day, we see him leaving Buds. He had a kickstand broken arm thing and a leg, and his mom was there escorting him out of there. He forgets I was there. I'm talking to the microphone. I know you were there. I'm saying dude, that was badass. You know, I hope you remember that.
But what do we do? Let's put a net under the slide for life, right?
Yeah.
What does that do? That takes away all of the fear that you need to have to perform under pressure.
Yeah.
Takes it all away because now it's kind of like, well, if I fall, no big deal.
Attention military members, veterans, and even their families. Navy Federal Credit Union is here to serve you with their member-owned, not-for-profit approach with low fees, great rates, and resources to help you crush your financial goals. Navy Federal is dedicated to putting their members at the heart of everything they do. Join Navy Federal today and discover the benefits that could save you more than $470 per year just by banking with them. Their average credit card APR is 6% lower than the industry average and a market-leading regular savings rate of nearly twice the industry average. Your money just works harder for you there. Plus, with their easy mobile app, you can redeem rewards as soon as you earn them. Don't miss out on their low intro APR offers. Go visit NavyFederal.org to learn more and start saving today. Navy Federal is insured by the NCUA, membership is required, and meshes and data rates may apply. Visit NavyFederal.org for more information.
Yeah.
But before you're 40 feet up and you fall, you're breaking something. And everybody's like, well, that's harsh, isn't it? And it's like, no, that's reality of war. You want a warfare operator that can handle immense pressure, then that's how they have to be trained. Not this kinder, gentler, let's put a safety net everywhere. No, I don't want a SEAL like that. I want a SEAL that I was thrilled when I had a bunch of SEALs that were not loudmouths, but that were proud and were they had a lot of bravado and hubris, but it was for the right reasons. And I was thrilled to be around a group of guys like that. And that was that platoon, hotel platoon. We started out as Alpha, switched to hotel, but that was that platoon again.
I was going to ask you the H on the motor. That's what that's for.
The H
right?
was the hotel platoon.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
So, but
I remember when the guys got good enough when you were allowed to flip up the tower.
oh yeah.
And then when
Instead of doing the
normal thing, and then when they could commando. When you see a guy switch like that, it's something. When they can flip over those obstacles
I
like
was
that.
not the best course guy, but I wasn't the worst. I was kind of middle of the pack, and
Isn't that where you want to be?
that was a
like,
thrilling day for me to be able to go do commando sled.
Yeah,
that was a really
best.
cool day. I know I talked last time I was here about helocast and recovery and all that good stuff, but that was a cool day doing commando slide.
Little
But
victories, man.
there has to be a level of, finality to whatever you're doing. There has to be, if I don't do this correctly, things are not going to work out so well
Right,
for me.
a consequence.
And
yeah.
if they don't, then if you get somebody used to that kind of mentality, what do you build? You build a huge amount of belief. And the more belief you build in the guy, the better he is at what he does.
Oh, sure.
So speaking of, with your book, we are going to list it on Team Never Quit so people
you.
can go on to our website and buy
We appreciate that.
your book, and you're going to sign them, right?
I will sign.
You're signing them? Yep. So if you want the book, just go on teamneverquit.com. And you've got a couple of other businesses too, the Old 18.
Yeah, the Old 18 Outfitters, all the fishing rods.
Yeah.
Old18.com.
All the fishermen go there.
Yeah.
Old 18.
Old18.com.
Yeah.
Best rods on the market, man.
Best rods on the market.
They strong.
And you're coming on with fly fishing rods.
They strong. Hoping December or September, October.
I'm going to need a couple of those. But thanks again for coming on here, man.
Yeah,
Doing that.
Thanks
you.
for having me.
This is the Team Never Quit podcast. So buckle up, Buttercup.